Morning. Good morning. On behalf of the Chicago Network, it is my pleasure to welcome you to Launchpad's Women's Leadership Summit 2020. I'm Maria Dowdy, President and CEO of the Chicago Network, and I'm really thrilled to be with you here today. Launchpad was started in 2014 and traditionally took place the morning of our Women in the Forefront luncheon. And I think some of you are aware and have been at that amazing, wonderful event. Year after year, participants kept raving about Launchpad. And so last year, a group of brilliant network members said, I think we should make this into a half day or full day event. And so here we are today, our first half day Women's Leadership Summit. And I guarantee you this is the first of very, very many future years. You are likely here today because you've been recognized by a colleague, mentor, or sponsor as a top performer, a current or emerging senior leader who represents the future of women leadership in Chicagoland. So congratulations on being here in the room. We have an extraordinary program. Yes. And I should say, we have many Zoom participants too. So those Zoom participants, we're so delighted to have you as well join us. And even though you're not in the room with us today, you're still in the room with that virtual piece. So we're thrilled to have you as part of the program. We do have an extraordinary program planned for you today. And this program provides you with an opportunity to build your network, take time for professional development, and learn from C-suite executives as to what it takes to get to the top. Launchpad would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors. So thank you to Invesco, KPMG, Deloitte, Halo Investing, Healthy Community Foundation, S&C Electric Company, and St. Xavier University. I would also like to give a special thanks to our Chicago Network Launchpad committee members. Some of them are here today, as well as the Chicago Network staff. There is no way we could do this without them. They have been extraordinary and they're totally my right hand and everything. So thank you to all those wonderful volunteers and staff. A few housekeeping matters. For those on Zoom, please remember to mute your microphones. And please utilize the chat feature in Zoom to ask questions. They will be monitored throughout the day. So you'll see a big little virtual card. We even have a virtual card for as virtual questions come in so our speakers and presenters can know that there's a virtual question. We will be forwarding a contact list of all in-person attendees following the program. If you'd like to opt out of this list, please let us know as soon as possible today. This is really an important aspect of this event. You're sitting in the room with your peers. And as you continue to build your career and continue to climb whatever ladder you're climbing within your organization or otherwise, these are going to be the women that you will want to turn to support you both professionally and personally. It's really what the Chicago Network is about. It's about that empowering women to lead, but also it's the relationships that they have with each other to support each other. So please take this opportunity to really get to know the women in the room. At a minimum, swap contact information if you want, but know that we will be sharing everyone's contact information after the session so that you will have a complete comprehensive list of those people. But take this time, please, if you're sitting next to people consider, at our break, moving. Now, I don't think anybody will be offended if you switch seats, but this is a chance. This is a chance for you to get to know each other. And I would be delighted if you all swapped every program, like after every session, you swapped chairs. That would be absolutely fantastic because that's what this is about. It'd be wonderful for you to leave with 5 women that you do not know that are not in your industry that you can connect with and can help build your future as you kind of continue on in your journey. We would also love for you to stay connected with the Chicago Network. So please follow us on LinkedIn. We also have a weekly newsletter. We have over 3,000 subscribers to that weekly newsletter. You will find incredibly interesting, wonderful information in there. So please consider subscribing to the newsletter, and you can find out what the top senior women are doing in Chicagoland. We're so fortunate to have premier speakers that are coming from all over the country, really, to come speak with you today. So we're going to go ahead and get started. First, I want to introduce Amy Geltner. She is the Vice President of Leadership Acceleration Practice at Bravanti. And Bravanti is a global firm that focuses on executive coaching, executive team optimization, and new leader and team acceleration. Amy has trained over 1,000 women in her career. Her bio is in the program, so I'm not going to go read what's in her bio, but she is truly an extraordinary person to have speak with us today. It is a real treat. She is an expert in leadership development, so she's got an incredible 50 minutes planned for you, and hopefully everyone was able to do the pre-work. And so you got your saboteurs assessment. I got mine. It was super fun, and it's always kind of wonderful when you see your life and your characteristics flash right in front of your face, for better or for worse. But that's what we're here for, right? You got to take what you got and you got to build from there and know the good and the bad. But that's how you become, one of these senior, wonderful women, just like our Chicago Network members. A few little fun facts about Amy. She is an avid reader. So if you need any book recommendations, she's the one to give them to you. She also is a boater and a walker. She loves the outdoors. She lives in the Chicago suburb with an energetic 12-year-old daughter, and she loves to spend time in her Wisconsin cabin. So she is an outdoor lover, and I think she probably finds peace and serenity in the outdoors. So I guess we'll find out when she speaks to us and gives us some additional tips. But please help me welcome Amy Geltner to our program.
Thank you. Good morning. It's so wonderful to be here with you and out of that Chicago traffic that I was sitting in. And I'm thrilled for two personal reasons. One is I broke my pinky toe about 2.5 weeks ago, and I'm in business shoes. So that in itself is a feat this morning. And the second is my energetic 12-year-old daughter came in and said, "Why are you leaving so early, Mom?" I said, "Well, I got to go downtown. I got to be there early." And she's like, "When do you perform?" And I can tell her I was on a stage, so I performed first. So these are two personal wins for me. But excited to be here with you all. And my hope for you in the next 50 minutes or so is that you have an awareness of something that you might not had any awareness of before, your saboteurs, and you walk away with a little bit more impact, right? And we're going to have a little fun while we do it. So are we good? Can we get started? Yeah. Okay. All right. So see if this sounds familiar. I will feel worthy when ... fill in the blank, or I feel valued when blank. Maybe it started back in high school. I will feel worthy when I get into that college. And then in college, it's when I land that job at X company. And then, it's a kind of a cycle, right? We get that job, we are elated, it's wonderful, but then we've, kind of imparted a new condition onto our happiness. So what is the fill in the blank that you're chasing today? I will say that if the fill in the blank, if you think that fill in the blank is going to make you happy, it's a lie from your saboteurs. And the saboteurs are the voices in our head that really sabotage our success. So we're going to learn how to tame those today. And so you'll walk away with some strategies to tame those saboteurs. And this is all backed by research and a book called Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Chamine. So check out the book if you haven't, and it's rooted in neuroscience. And what he identifies is these internal obstacles that we face. And these internal obstacles he calls limiting beliefs, our limiting beliefs or our saboteurs, because they sabotage our success. And he's identified 10 key saboteurs that operate within us. So let's see. There we go. All right, so the first saboteur that I'm going to introduce you to is the judge. And this one didn't show up in your assessment if you took the assessment before you came here today. But I call the judge the master saboteur or the universal saboteur because every single one of us has a judge. And the judge shows up for us in 3 ways. The first way the judge shows up for us is that we judge ourselves, right? What's wrong with me? Why didn't I catch that mistake? I should have been more prepared. That's that ourselves. Then the judge shows up and judges others. So what's wrong with you? Or we all kind of make quick, quick judgments when people walk into the room. And then the third is the judge judges our circumstances or the outcomes. I can't impact that company culture. It is what it is, right? And the judge is our inner critic and is the thing that tells us, you're not good enough, or you're not smart enough, you're not worthy. And it really makes us feel a lot of negative feelings, generates shame, disappointment, guilt. It's that inner voice. The judge does not act alone though. The judge actually activates all of one or more of your accomplice saboteurs. So if you took the assessment, you'll see you fall you got your results and you fall on a spectrum on a scale of 1 to 10 in all of these different 9 saboteurs. And we consider your top saboteurs anything that's like 7.5, 8, 9, 10 on that scale of 1 to 10. So even if you didn't take the assessment, don't worry. There's handouts on your table that show this slide exactly if you can't read the little words. I'm going to go through them briefly. And if you haven't taken the assessment, just do a hunch or a guess at what might be one of your top saboteurs. But the controller, by definition, likes to take control, feels good when they're in control, and has a little anxiety when that's not possible. The second, going down the left, is the stickler. This is perfection and an organization to the nth degree. So likes when everything is right. The next is the avoider, right? Avoids unpleasant things, extreme things, kind of, if I avoid it, maybe it'll go away. Then there's the hyperachiever. This is, I have to accomplish something. My worth is determined, by the things that I accomplish. And the hyperachiever can tend to have workaholic tendencies. Then we have the pleaser. Pleaser's all about relationships and, always puts others' needs in front of their own. The victim is, something's always happening to me. I can't change these circumstances. The martyr. Then the restless profile. The restless profile, is bored easily, really needs to constantly stay busy. Then there's the hypervigilant, and I call this one danger, danger, risk, risk, right? So with everything in every situation, tries to find what's going to go wrong. And then the hyper-rational. This profile doesn't like to stay in that emotional state. It's more of the, if there's a problem, work the problem. Let's find a solution. So that rationale. So if you did the assessment, you got a bunch of results, and it went in a whole page of each of these. And what I liked about it is it talked a little brief description of the saboteur. It gave a definition, some characteristics of what that saboteur is. You can read a little bit more about it. Then I talked about the thoughts you may have or the feelings that may come up for you when your saboteur shows up. And then that page also gives you, which I like, a little bit of the justification of where may this have come from? So even if you didn't take the assessment, just kind of take a hunch or a guess as we work through some of these saboteurs today. And my top 4 are a tie for first place. So my top 4 saboteurs are the upper left-hand quadrant. So controller, stickler, hyperachiever, and pleaser. Try going to sleep in my head at night. But when I think about them, they make sense, right? All throughout my childhood, from a hyperachiever standpoint, every Saturday we had a list of chores that we had to do on the closet taped up. And we go, and as I was accomplishing tasks and getting things done, I get praised, I get rewarded, right? These saboteurs have served us well. So you may be a little skeptical. These have served me well. Why are these bad? And they do serve a purpose, and there are benefits to all these profiles and behaviors. But the challenge is we can stay stuck in the negative, and they do generate negative feelings. We can be stuck in that negative side of our brain for too long. And when we do that, that really takes away from another dimension of our life that matters more. Does that make sense? So we want to make sure that we can identify these, tame them, so we can recognize when they pop up, because they will pop up. But how do we transition and shift more into that positive side and stay less in the negative for less time? So we're going to identify your top saboteurs today. We're going to do it in a fun way. And I know, Maria asked us to really network. Well, I'm going to make you get up and move and switch groups like twice. So you're going to be standing and moving. And we're just going to hopefully get ourselves better equipped to manage what can be a somewhat destructive voice within. So here's the first thing that I'm going to ask you to do. And for those of us on the phone virtually, we will just sit tight. We're going to pop you virtually into breakout rooms. You don't have to do anything, and then we'll pop you back to the main room when it's time. But for those of us in the room, in a minute, I'm going to ask you to stand up and get with 4 or 5 people that you don't know. Doesn't matter what your top saboteur is, but you're going to identify one of them. If you have a tie, like my 4-way tie, just pick one that you're going to think through today. And when you're in your groups, I want you to talk through, how does that top saboteur show up for you? What does that look like? Give some examples to your group. And then what's beneficial about the saboteur? Because we said there are some benefits. But then I want you to flip it and think about, what is the lie that it's trying to get you to believe, or how does it work against you? So I'll give you an example of me before we break out. So I said one of my top 4 was a pleaser, right? I like to, when everyone around me is happy, I like that. And I tend to put others' needs before my own. So some examples of that, of when that's beneficial is, I'll go along with what everybody else wants to do. That makes it very easy for my friends and family and coworkers and colleagues. But the lie that it's trying to make me believe is, you're worthy when others around you are pleased with what you do. And that could work against me, because the truth is you can't please everyone, right? And nor should you. And I don't want to resent myself or others. And those are the negative feelings that can pop up. So I just want you to take some time, and there's flip charts around the room and markers around the room. So when you get with your group, even if there's not, you can actually stand at a flip chart, you can grab one and just jot some notes down, because we're going to talk about them when we come back as a larger group. But talk through, how does it show up for me? What does that look like? How does that feel? And then what's the lie that it's trying to get you to believe? Are we clear on the instructions? All right, so I'm going to give you about 15 minutes to do that. So go ahead and stand up and find those 4 or 5 other people and start having your discussions. All right, so let's hear from some of your conversations. I want to hear some of the highlights from your conversations. So I think Laura has a microphone. She's going to run around if you want to say something. So don't be shy, anyone virtually or in the room. Just talk about some of the highlights that your group had in your conversation. So just shoot your arm up. Anyone want to share highlights from your conversations? We have a hand. Perfect.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? My name is Barbara Moreno-Paschal. I'm with the Illinois Human Rights Commission, and our table had a lot of similar saboteurs, as probably all the tables have today, given who's here in the room and who's on Zoom. Some of our top saboteurs were hypervigilant, avoider, hyperachiever, stickler, restless. And some of the themes we had were that many things can go wrong. It's about finding a solution, being able to resolve those conflicts, and also trying to manage when you're thinking about trying to avoid conflict in some ways, but also embracing that conflict's going to happen and how can you navigate and resolve conflict, and also pushing past your comfort zone and pushing those boundaries in order to achieve the life and the career that you want, and navigating all of the external factors, including family, work-life integration, and all of the other things that we're thinking about. And prioritization above all is critical to finding our ways to push back, tame the saboteurs and push past some of the limitations. Thank you.
Absolutely. Great job. Nice convo. What other highlights does anyone have from the conversations you had with your group? Go ahead, right here.
Hello, my name is Katie Russell, and I'm with International Justice Mission, also a human rights organization, so we should probably talk. And actually, we went a little bit different direction. It was interesting. We talked about how our saboteurs actually really reflect what we each do individually at our own organizations or companies. And it really, who we are and what we do is really intertwined with actually kind of those beneficial components of the saboteurs.
Absolutely. Like I said, there's benefits, right? They have served us well in our lives. We just don't want to be stuck in that negative. So, okay. Anyone else? Okay, in the back.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm Karina Hero. One of our biggest takeaways at this table, Emily, thank you, was that done is better than perfect. Because an emerging theme for us was that we are sticklers.
Okay. What was the primary saboteur in the group?
Well, for I think 3 of us, it was stickler. I think hyper vigilant also showed up. What else did I miss, ladies? Pleaser. Yes, pleaser was a common one.
Okay.
And the other thematic item we talked about was just self-awareness and the evolution through self-awareness that helps us manage the saboteurs.
Yeah.
So
100%. Great. What new awareness did anyone gain? Is there a new awareness that anyone gained while having their conversation?
I personally found I was in the same group where we were talking about how it benefits our role, but at the same time, for example, one of mine was restless. If you never turn off these saboteurs, then how do you recharge and unplug? And so finding a way to keep them on if it's benefiting you at work or whatever mission you're on, but then learning how to create that boundary to turn them off so you can recharge and come back with the same strength.
Perfect. I didn't set you up, but that's a great segue to the next part. So those lies that our saboteurs tell us are limiting beliefs, right? So we're going to take a look at how we tame them. And for any Harry Potter fans in the room, Harry says, is this really happening or is it just in my head? And Dumbledore says, of course it's happening in your head, Harry, but does it make it any less real? Right? So as humans, we are psychological beings. And, our mind, a majority of it is like an iceberg, right? It's subconscious, right? It's under that waterline. And our subconscious and conscious beliefs guide our actions. So we have to figure out, how do we capture when that limiting belief comes up, and then start to shift it away from that negative and into the positive, or what we are calling a more empowering belief. So how do we do that? And you'll see this kind of tape running through this woman's mind, right? We have these psychological tapes since we're children that are the voices in our head. And they tell us when to be fearful or to be subconscious about something. They are the things that just play, and it typically forms a pattern, right? I'm not good at public speaking, or it's not okay to ask for help. So we have to start to shift and recognize when these tapes play, and I know tape is archaic now, but we have to be able to hit pause. When we hear that tape playing, hit pause and start to transition into more of an empowering belief and away from that saboteur negative space and more in towards the positive. Again, because I said the challenge is we can stay in that negative too long. And then that takes away from what, another dimension of your life that matters more. So we're going to have a little bit of fun in that. In another minute, I'm going to ask you to get up and move to another separate set of 4 or 5 people. So different people than you talked to before. And again, those joined us virtually. We're going to break you out into different breakout groups and bring you back. But this time I want you to think about what are the situations that trigger one of your top saboteurs? What circumstance brings up that limiting belief? And what is the voice in your head? What is that tape that plays? What does it say to you? Then we're gonna have a little fun. I want you to figure out, if you hit pause, what is that new chosen belief that you're gonna replace it with? And I like to think of it as kind of like a bumper sticker or a slogan. And you can have fun with it, but I'll go back to my example of pleaser was one of my competing top 4 saboteurs. And, when I'm doing all these things to make sure that all the others around me, have their needs met, sometimes I can feel like mine aren't getting met. And when that happens, that voice in the head says, well, you're not worthy if the things that you're doing aren't pleasing everyone around you. So if we have any Frank Sinatra fans in the room, my new slogan is, I won't sing it for you because I have a horrible singing voice, but I'll do it my way, right? And so that's my new slogan, and it puts me a little bit more into the positive, like, it's okay. I can put my own needs first sometimes. I can't please everyone, and I can start to move on and be more in that positive space about it. Another pleaser slogan that I use sometimes is clear is kind. Because somebody might not be happy with what I have to say, doesn't mean that I should beat around. I should be clear, and clear is actually the more kind thing to do in the end. So I use these little bumper stickers, these slogans to just transition and hit pause when that tape is playing and move into my new chosen belief. So I'm gonna have you stand up again, find 4 or 5 new people, grab flip charts, paper, notes, whatever, and talk through these scenarios. Some great discussions. I would like to hear from some of you on how you started shifting your limiting belief into your empowering belief by your slogan or bumper sticker. So I'm sure there were some good ones that came up. So if you could just raise your hand if you want to share what your saboteur is, and then what your bumper sticker or slogan is that you came up with. Who'd like to share? Great.
So hi, everyone. I'm Kathy Scherer, the Chicago Managing Partner for Deloitte. And one of my saboteurs is avoidance. And so my slogan is just do it.
Just do it. Love it. All the avoiders are taking notes right now. I mean, I know there's controllers in the room and you guys don't like to sit idle long, so come on.
Hello, Gina Blyer with KPMG, and I'm a controller.
Okay.
So my slogan is let it go.
Let it go. Perfect. I think we had some hands over here. Who wanted to share? Saw some hands. Who could share their, go ahead. Perfect. Thank you.
Should I want to put my butt to you? Hi, I'm Candace. I'm with Next Group, which is my company. And I am both a high achiever and a pleaser.
Mhm.
And my slogan, similar to yours, was frank but fun. So
Oh, I love it. We'll take one more. Go ahead, right there. Hand up there. Perfect.
Hi, I'm Tressa Cat with the Northridge Group, and I am a stickler and a controller both. And my slogan is "My way's better, but your way will work."
Oh, I love that. I'm stealing that for my next example, the next session that we do. Well, hopefully you had some fun with that. But I challenge you all as we come up on, wrapping it up here, to choose a new perspective. You all have a little bit more awareness about something today that hopefully you can take and start to shift from that negative side of your brain or that limiting belief and transition, hit pause on that tape and a new chosen belief for you, or that empowering belief. And that next, fill in the blank thing for you, you can say, stop, I got it. I have it. That's a lie from my saboteur, and transition over into your empowering belief. Because I promise you, when you change the way you look at things, the things that you look at will change. So thank you. We have like 2 minutes if there's any questions from anyone, either virtually, if there's any questions that came up in the chat or in the room. Or we can let you have some 12 minutes of networking. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amy, so much. Hopefully we've all identified our saboteurs, tamed them, and then shift in the positive side. I have everybody's, I love these: done better than perfect. Just do it. My way is better, but your way will work. That's just fabulous. So we have 10-minute break. So just, you could shift tables, you could stay where you are, you could grab some more coffee, grab some more food, but enjoy each other's company. And we'll be back at the top of the hour. Thanks.
Love it. So good morning. I'm Maria del Socorro Pesqueira. I am the president of the Healthy Communities Foundation, and so very pleased to be a member of the Chicago Network and have been part with some other amazing committee members for the Chicago Network. And when we were thinking about the lineup for today, and we were talking about some as we had earlier, as you saw, and as you see in the lineup of the rest of your morning, some really great conversation and who could be some leads in sparking our personal and professional development. And I couldn't help but think of my hermana, Elizabeth Suarez, and you have her bio in front of you, but there are some things that aren't necessarily in her bio that you should know. First of all, she is phenomenal. She is a woman who is a mother of a young college student who is studying abroad in Sevilla. And so, of course, don't know where she categorized herself in those, but she decided to do the Camino de Santiago in 13 days. Could you believe this woman? This is what she does. She just literally came back from that. So that is Elizabeth. She's an author, and she wrote this book called, get this, The Art of Getting Everything: How to Negotiate for What You Want and More. That's Elizabeth. The other thing you should is that's in her bio, but I want to highlight, is that whether she's on Wall Street or in academia, her vision is for every decision-making table to reflect the markets in which they serve. To reach this goal, Elizabeth, she empowers professionals and executives with leadership, negotiation, and inclusivity skills so that they may better advocate for themselves and more responsibly advocate for others. And that would result in a stronger bottom line and improved employee retention and satisfaction. When combined, these equate to measurable inclusive growth. So I couldn't help but think about how that ties into the Healthy Communities Foundation goal towards achieving equity. So Elizabeth, for no further ado, let me present my hermana, Elizabeth Suarez.
Gracias. Thank you. Bueno, hi everybody. I was going to say buenos dias. I just came back from Spain. So how's everybody doing? Wow, great room. First of all, I want to thank Maria. Maria, thank you. When Soko, I call Maria Socorro Soko. So when Soko sent me a message and says, hey, would you do this? I said, sure, I will come to Chicago. Plus, it's a beautiful day. So I live in Denver, Colorado. So I'm one of those people that is a nut outdoors person. So I've met some nutty outdoor badass women at my table that we are going to go and do some wheeling and we are. So anyway, enough about that. So today, this is what I want to talk about. One of the things what Soko said to you is, which is very frustrating for me. I spent 2 decades in corporate America. I was that Latina with 2 Ivy League educations, an Ivy League certificate. I mean, I did everything. I mean, I was valedictorian. I mean, I don't know. I was the nerd. I was the partier. I don't know. I dated the right people, did not date the right people. I mean, I did everything, check, that my mother, Latina mother, told me that I needed to do. And then, I mean, I get into corporate America, and the first thing that happened to me after I got my MBA, I get a director's job at PepsiCo International in New York City. And they're like, okay, you're going to be responsible for Latin America. I'm like, oh, great. This is great. This is my dream. My mother, my Latina mother's like, oh my God, she has made it. You know, so I get there, and in the morning I'm with HR, but then they said at 1 o'clock, hey, you have the first business development meeting for Latin America. You need to go to this meeting. I'm like, oh, okay. So I show up in the meeting. You know, I was not going to be fashionably late. You know, that's very well known for Latinas, but I was like, no, I'm going to be there. So I get there at 12:55, and it's a huge like boardroom, and there's some men, you know, I'm the only female walking in. So there's some men sitting around. So I basically look in the room and I said, well, I'm going to have to be like in the center so they see me. So I put myself there in the center, sit myself and put my bill forward. I mean, and I'm there, I'm like all there. And then this man next to me turns to me and says, oh, great, you got here. And I thought, wow, what a great reception immediately. He says, hey, I would wonder when the coffee is getting here. I like black coffee. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about mi mamá, mi abuela, mi tatarabuela. I mean, I'm thinking of everybody, all the women that came before me. I'm like, oh no, boyfriend. Oh, papito, you're done. You are so done right now. So I looked at him and said, great. I take mine with sugar and extra cream. His face, he just looked at me, says, I'm the vice president, blah, blah, blah. I said, well, I'm the new director of business development for Latin America. My name is Elizabeth Suarez. And he looks at the piece of paper, this, you know, was eons ago. And he does, I said, oh yeah, E. Suarez, you thought that was Eduardo. No, it's Elizabeth. So anyway, this was the base of why once I left corporate America, I said, what am I going to do next? And this is the reason why I became who I am today, because I came to realize that every company, every organization should have the decision-making table reflect the markets they serve. Pepsi-Cola's decision-making table still doesn't reflect the market they serve, especially in Latin America. So that's what I want to talk to you about today. And what I want to share with you is 3 ways that you need to empower yourself, because this is not going to happen organically. It doesn't happen organically. We're not men, okay? It won't happen, or I don't care what people say. Trust me, I tried the organic thing, the Ivy Leagues, the experience, blah, blah, blah. I tried it all. It does not work. Even still, in 2022, it does not work. So you have to take control of things that you can do in order to, you know, move forward that organic approach. So let me start with this. This is the thing I want you to consider. Before you look at these 3 bullet points, I want you to think about an effective leader. Take a second and thinking about an effective leader that has actually made a difference in your career. Think about that person, okay? Do you have that person in mind? I want you to now say to me, what word describes this effective leader? What word would you use to describe this effective leader? I'm sorry? Inspiring. What else? What other word? Inclusive, teacher, empowering. Okay, so these are, what? Challenging. Who said challenging? Get up. Okay, come on. Tell me why challenging. This is great. I like it. You're the first one saying something that is not bad. Oh, wonderful. Okay.
I am from Elevance Health Healthcare Company. I had a boss that every Friday we had a one-on-one, and every Friday he left me with something, and he's like noodle on it over the weekend, and it's always like, how can we be better? How can we organize differently? You know, can you think about this problem? And maybe a better.
Right there. Thank you. You should thank that individual. That's what an effective leader does. Yeah, they empower, they're inclusive, they're great. They're their cheerleader and everything, but they need to do that. Just having an effective leader that's like, oh, Elizabeth, you're wonderful. You're never going to grow. The next question is, how is success measured by your effective leader? Anybody wants to say, how does that leader that you consider to be effective measures his or her success? Anybody wants to share? Yes, in the back.
How many people he makes successful?
Oh. Okay. Or she.
I was thinking specifically about the person in my life who's been
Okay.
that leader, and it's a he, but
So-
it's a he or a she.
Yeah. Let me ask, show of hands, your effective leader, is it a man? Go ahead, show of hands. Ay, bendito, we have to change this, okay. The rest are females. You see the problem right here? Okay, that's a good one. Anybody else? How this effective leader measures your success? Oh yeah, can you hold? I know Laura has to go because there's people in Zoom. Hi, Zoom people. Okay.
Hi, I said they are sought out for their opinion. So they're respected and they actually have a seat at the table.
Exactly. That's a very key one. Many times you have to realize an effective leader doesn't need to be a CEO. An effective leader can be a manager. An effective leader can be a subject matter expert. So that's a key one. Thank you for sharing that. And then last, what is the best asset of an effective leader? What do you think is the best asset of this individual? What? What? Oh, they're a team. What else? Yes.
Measuring their success by their successes.
Okay, measuring their success by their people's successes. I really like that. One more. Yes.
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness. You want to say a little bit about that? Okay.
That can support. So an effective leader, their ability to be self-aware translates into how they engage others to bring their team's best talents forward to progress.
Perfect, perfect. So these are great. As you can see, what the summary of everything you have shared with me is very positive. This effective leader can actually make a difference in your life. This effective leader is thinking about others. This effective leader works towards your success. So it's a wonderful thing to do that. Now, this is our reality as women, because everything you describe, don't tell me a woman cannot do, okay? So look at this. So I went ahead and did some research, and I like this organization called Catalyst. And at the end of last year in 2021, they brought out these numbers. And this is what they said. They said, okay, so these are the women, percentage of women that we have. And this is actually United States and Canada. This is not the entire world. So they're like, okay, in C-suites, 24% of the people in C-suites across this country and Canada are women. Women of color, 4%. As a Latina, that makes me really mad. Okay, senior vice president, 27% are women, only 6% are women of color. And then VP, 30% women, 7% women of color. And then director, a little bit higher, 36%, 9% women of color, okay? You would say, well, Elizabeth, at least it's going up, at director level, blah, blah, blah. It's still a glass ceiling. To get into the C-suite is not that easy. I am a coach for Fortune 100 companies like Pfizer, L'Oreal, Capital One, Viasat. And I can tell you, women in the C-suite, I mean, I coach a lot of men. And what do you think my focus is of coaching the men? I'm like, who do you have around your table? I mean, I can tell the men are like sitting there doing, oh my God, yeah. One of them, he just hired his CFO, and he was like, he kept on texting me and everything. He does, okay, this is the final list of people. And he does, do you see the list has 53% women? I'm like, yeah. I mean, he's like sweating it. He's like sweating through the entire process. He says, this is so hard. Good news, he hired a Pakistani woman and she has hit it out of the ballpark. He even admitted to me, he said, it's been a year since he hired her. The last time I saw him, he told me, he says, if I would have not been coached by you, I would have never hired her. And you know what? She's the best hire I have done in a decade. I mean, it's not because she's a woman. It's because he opened his network and he opened the reach in order to get there. This is the issue we have. There's a huge gap. Women represent 50.5% of the population in this country, and women of color 36.3%. And we're still at single digit when it comes to the, to leadership roles. Are we kidding ourselves? We really are. So what I want to do today is like, we already have a tide going against us, but there's some stuff we can do in order to come out for some air and do, okay, we need to do this. So let me start that. The fact is that everybody said this, women are better at soft skills. That's number one. Number two, work-life balance. If somebody comes to us with an issue they have dealing at life, dealing personally, we're not going to say, well, yeah, well, good luck. That's still due on Tuesday. I mean, and they're not. They're like, oh my God, let's figure this out. Let's even help each other to make sure that you can succeed and make sure that this can go forward. And you know what? Go and take care of that. We will take care of this. The other thing is men. Did you know this, that men are more likely to collaborate with other men? You see it, they go golfing, they go to the bathroom together. I don't know what else they do. I mean, you see it, you know what I mean? But women, we're more egalitarian. We believe in equality. We believe in equity. I mean, this is like normal. This is part of our DNA. So why can't we take part of this DNA and do this? And then last but not least, we develop others and are known for listening more effectively. Actually here, when I walked in and I met many of you, I mean, people were asking me questions and they were actually listening to me. I come to events like that and they're like, Menya, how are you? Yeah. They keep on walking. I mean, like what I told them, they can't even remember. I mean, I told Maria about El Camino, my experience at Camino. She kept on introducing me and said, she just did a Camino, like 190 miles. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, she's listening. And that's the thing that we're known for. So what I want to do is I want to tell you the 3 ways to become an effective leader. One is act inclusively. I already told you we know how to do that. So I'm going to give you approaches on how to do it. I mean, we're already like wired. Our DNA is wired to do that. So why aren't we doing it correctly in order to people realize that we're doing that? Portray agility. Come on. How many balls do we have in the air? Let's be serious. You think our spouses are doing half of what we do? They really aren't. I mean, they say they are. Don't you like to hear them say, oh, I help at the house? Yeah, well, you help at the house. Are you serious? You don't even make reservations. You know what I mean? It's like, come on, let's be serious. Nothing against the men. Love you all 3 there. Thank you. I really do. I really do. And last but not least, be the influencer, no matter your position. I'm going to give you some ideas on how to be an influencer. And I'll share a story with you where I did amazingly. And when I worked in Silicon Valley and telecom, due to an influencer that was not in a leadership position, the influencer was an engineer. And due to that influencing that I would get from that individual, I succeeded incredibly. So let me start with the aspect of inclusiveness. And basically, the managing diversity has to be done in an inclusive way. Just doing it like, well, let me get this person and this other person. Elizabeth said that, in Denver, they're 40% Latino, so I'll put 40% Latinos. There are 12% Black, so I'll put 12% Black. There are 8% Asians, I'll put 8% Asians, and then the remainder are white. Okay, I put them all together. Oh, they're 50.5% women, so I'll put 50.5 women. Okay, there, I have my inclusive, my diverse team. It's not done that way because diversity goes beyond race and goes beyond gender. It also goes goes into background, it goes into thoughts, it goes into approaches. There's so many things that you have to do that. So we cannot just put many people in power now. They say, well, I have a diverse team and it's chaotic and it's not working, because they haven't done it correctly on how to do it. So here's a quick approach on how to do it, especially when you're trying to put together a team or when you're influencing others to put together a team. There are 3 things to consider. Ask questions and be curious. When people are saying, oh, so-and-so should be in this team, go and ask questions to this person. Listen to this person, ask even further questions. Don't just start at the first level of asking questions. Dive in. When you are going to have, like, we all become reporters. That's what we have to do. We all need to become reporters. And have you been interviewed by a reporter? They ask you one question, then by question number 5, they have you like already hanging, because they're like dig and dig and dig and dig and dig, and you answer it and they're like dig, 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 dig. You know, that's what you can do. You need to ask the questions and be curious. You have to gain insights from others, which is perspective. And that means even if you don't like it, and unfortunately we live in a world since 2016 that everybody feels that their perspective is reality and it's fact. Let me inform all of you, your perspective is not reality. Your perspective is not the fact, okay? The truth is somewhere else. And that's for everybody. And what happens is that we start talking to people, we're having the question, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I don't like what she thinks. Forget it, I'm not her friend, I could care less. Actually, that's the time when you should talk more and get to know more, because all of a sudden your mind will open up with some thoughts and ideas. And then last but not least, and I'm going to talk to you about this right now, expand your network. I love how people tell me, oh my God, Elizabeth, I network. I said, oh, well, tell me how you network. Oh my God, all the time. I go to all these activities. I'm on these Zoom calls. I'm on these virtual chats, blah, 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 blah. And I do. And how many people do you, oh my God, I know everybody in the group. That's not networking. You know what networking is? When you do not know people around you. How many of you are sitting in a table that you don't know anybody at the table? Good, ladies. The Chicago network is working. That's what you have to do. I have seen so many women just walk into a place and I see it, they freeze. They're like, oh my God, I don't know anybody. That's when you do game on. Let's go. Who's the first group? I go by who's cute. I'm like, oh, he's cute. Let's go over there. I mean, you just start talking to him and then you go over there. Oh yeah, he's interesting. Look at the outfit he has. Oh, look at her outfit. Okay, let me go and talk to her. I mean, basically do whatever. I mean, make it as a game, but you need to go and meet people. So with that, this is how I would say you can't operate in a vacuum. I'm talking to being inclusive and asking the questions and being open to different perspective. You can't operate in a vacuum, because if you operate in a vacuum, you're going to stay on your lane. And many times you cannot stay in your lane. So basically what I do is, believe it or not, I actually did not like, when I was in corporate America and I had these jobs, they were like, oh, Elizabeth, you have to go to this conference. And then you have to, like, you know, back then you have to bring out, I don't know how many business cards, blah, 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 business development, blah, blah, blah. I did not like doing that. I would have rather gone to my hotel room, ask for, the dinner, room service, and then watch TV, get on Lifetime and watch some movie where I'm killing my husband. You know what I mean? Something like that. I mean, that would have been wonderful for me. But no, I was like, oh, I have to go and network. So as the engineer, I'm a chemical engineer, I went ahead and decided, okay, these people want me to bring stuff. So I'm like, so what I do in any network I go, I already did it. I passed it today. I have 5 conversations. I ask 3 questions. And then I basically do a follow-up. Ladies, I haven't done the follow-up with you all, but I'll do the follow-up. So don't worry about that. So I do the follow-up, and that's an email. Basically what I do is I look at 5 conversations, 5 people to have the conversations. I ask questions about them. It's not about me. Like, hey, one of them showed me, why don't you show your pictures, Suzette? She showed me a badass picture of hers doing some army stuff. And here I am, I thought, oh, I came from a Camino Santiago. She showed me that picture. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm nobody. I have done nothing in my life. But I mean, basically that's how you do. You start asking questions and people will start talking about themselves. By talking about themselves, you get to know them. So when you follow up, you can send a personal follow-up. And then what can you do with this information? Basically, everybody involved gets value. There, you get some growth and some learning. And most importantly, you have ongoing management. You can figure out what's going on, and then you start segmenting your network. Have you segmented your network? There are 4 ways to segment your network. So you meet these people, and basically you have network number 1, which are decision makers. That's an important one. You know what I mean? You need to have decision makers, people that make decisions, people that have responsibility for large budgets, people that, you know, are in power. I mean, you need to figure out how to get into those people's network. Number 2, influencers. Who are those people that when they speak, the decision makers listen? That's the key thing. Influencers have the ear of the decision makers. That is the bottom line. That's why influencers are so important. And please, influencers are not Kim Kardashian, okay? Let me clarify that right now. I do not like the fact that she has taken that word and taken over that word. Influencers are people that no matter the position they're in, they influence decision makers. And then there's the other group, the information source. These are the people that know everything. Don't you know people that when you start talking about something, they're like a Wikipedia? Like a walking Wikipedia. They can tell you everything. And you're like, wow, do you have a life? Like, this is all you do? And then last but not least, because we need that, the cheerleaders. When you're feeling down, these are the people you call, you send an email, and they're like, oh my God, you're the greatest thing. And you're like, repeat it. You're the greatest thing. Can you bold it? You're the greatest. I mean, you basically, those are the people you are. I normally have them like 25% each in my network. I sometimes have a little bit more decision makers. As the owner of my own consulting agency, I need a lot of decision makers because I need to be hired. So I have a lot of decision makers and influencers, but I still have the cheerleaders. I really have those cheerleaders. And it's something that when you're doing all those conversations, those 5 conversations, when I did the 5-3-1, every month you should network with 5 new people. And when you're identifying those 5 new people, I would say to you, make sure that you figure out where they fall. Don't have this skewed. Like, oh, 70% of my networks are cheerleaders. No, it shouldn't be. Start adding to the other group. Because you know what? Those cheerleaders will always be there. That's the greatest thing of cheerleaders. You may not speak to them for a decade. You call them. They're like, oh my God, Elizabeth, I have missed you. I'm like, I haven't, but that's okay. I'm glad that you're bringing on your pom-pom. So, I mean, that is the key thing. You need to look at it from that perspective. So some call to action for you to think of, and due to time, we're not going to do it here, but I want you every quarter for you to sit down and think, okay, where am I when it comes to these 4 segments? Who do I have there? Who do I need to add? And if you don't know who to add, look in this room, okay? Call people from this room, send them an email and say, I'm looking for more decision makers. I'm looking for more influencers to add to my networking. Okay. So that's number 1. That's the inclusiveness that includes obviously the part of being networking. The next one is to be an agile leader. And what does this mean? That means that you have to be a collaborator. Surprise, aren't women collaborators? Yes. That means that we have to empower others to grow. Surprise, don't we do that? Yes. Number 3, see failures as opportunities to learn and foster trust. And what I'm going to share with you here is Jeff Bezos from Amazon. What made him propel to where he is right now, even if you like or don't like Jeff Bezos, you have to give it to him. In 2014, he sent a letter to his board of trustees and he informed his board of trustees. 2014, Amazon was around, but it's not the superpower he has right now. He sent a letter to the board of trustees to inform him that all the decisions made in Amazon was only going to take 60% of analyzing and figuring out if they need to move forward. They're not going to be perfect. And he said that because he said, we need to make decisions quickly. The market is moving. So we're only going to have 60% of the information and we're going to make a decision. The board of trustees would, oh, are you kidding me? No, we need to be perfect. We're not perfect. He told the board of trustees, we're not perfect. And if there is a failure, and there will be failure, and he said it, he had multiple failures, immediately he reacted and he already had another 60% and he went ahead and made the decision. He diverted the decision. That's what I'm saying. Failures, you look at it as opportunities. This is how I view failure. So I go ahead and try something. Being an owner of a consulting agency, I have a few people that work for me, and some of them do, oh, we're doing that? I'm like, yeah, go. And she's like, the marketing person's like, she does this, like, oh my God, okay, let me send it. And then she comes back to me, says, these are the numbers, this is not working. I'm like, oh, okay, well then what should we do? Let's divert it. And she's like, oh my God, you just changed course that quickly. I'm like, we change it. And then you figure out, oh, okay, I can go this far. Perfect. That's where I go. Oh, it's not good. Go back. Oh, now it's working. So we stay there. That's how we look at it. And that is, I call it the Jeff Bezos effect when it comes to failures as opportunities. So here's an approach on how to be this agile leader. Understand the variety of viewpoints. And that was one thing that Jeff Bezos understood. He was raised by a mother that did the pyramid scheme. Do you remember that pyramid scheme and Amway, and you had it in your garage, all the stuff? That's what he had. And he, at age 8, 9, 10, and I know all this because he went to high school in Miami with my cousin. So my cousin was friends with him. And he would say to my cousin, I don't understand why my mother has all these boxes. And then we go to my tia's house and it's the same thing, all these boxes. And then her friend's house and all these boxes. Like they should only have one location with all the boxes and they go and grab which box they need when somebody buys something. That's how he started the concept of Amazon. So he had a variety of viewpoints and he still does, and asking questions, assesses situations and strategies. He's always assessing, should this work? If it's not working, the what if. If it doesn't work, what do we do? And then make decision and take action. That's the key. Many times we want perfection. Ladies, perfection is the biggest problem in your life. The biggest problem in your life is to be perfect. Even as a mother, a spouse, a friend, whatever. If you're perfect, you're going to miss the relationship. Just do it. So if that's all you remember from my talk, remember this, that perfection doesn't work. And then last but not least, admit errors and change course quickly. Admit it, like, oh, I made that decision. That was not a good decision. One thing that I have had 4 people that have reported to me, like worked with me since I started my agency a decade ago. They have never left. And you know what they tell me? They're like, wow, you admit that you were wrong and you come to us and you tell us, you know what, I'm sorry I did that. They're like, they said that the first time I did that, they were all like, is she for real? Like they were shocked. And that's what you have to do. An agile leader just moves. It's like a sailboat. Where's the wind coming? Okay, well, let's go there and let's do that. Okay, so that's a key one for an agile thing. So the agile approach, what I would recommend for you to do is to look at this and say, which one am I more challenged by? So let me ask one of you. Anybody wants to say, of these 4, which one challenged you the most? Yes, over here, Laura. Yeah.
I would say it's make decisions and take action, because I like to think about the decisions. I like data points. And so sometimes I can be a little slow on that step.
Okay, and that's a key thing. So she likes data points. She likes to look at the decision. That's the other thing we're known for. Do you color code your data and your table? Yeah. And we color code it, and then we have like a pie chart with different colors, like the latest color for the fall, and then the color for the winter. I mean, I see it sometimes. I mean, I'm coaching an executive woman. I love her dearly, but she's like, look, she was making a decision and she asked me, she said, in this session, I want to talk to you because the decision I'm making, it's like multi-million-dollar decision and I want to bounce it off with you. I'm like, sure, not a problem. She starts talking to me about the decision and everything. She says, I need to bring out data. So I told her, said, okay, I will allow you to bring out data. She starts bringing out this PowerPoint presentation, literally the color scheme. And then you see how it flows and everything. I said, you know what? Just the color scheme and the flowing, you have lost me, because what I want to look at is exactly what is the trigger that makes you make this decision. So I know you need data, but data, more than 60% data, it sort of gets clouded. So if it's not the right decision, you can make it again. You can make another decision. One more. Who would like to speak? And if nobody speaks, I'm going to get my girlfriend to do it. Okay. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
So for me, it's the first one. Understand the variety of viewpoints.
Yes.
Because I know how important it is. I also know that I'm always right. So
yeah, there's that.
I guess. So I like to have many people who disagree with me, and I have to challenge myself to really understand their viewpoints.
Exactly. So what I'm going to recommend for you, become a reporter. Like become that reporter that even though they're telling you, I have a dear friend that her son is a reporter for a station that is very to an extreme, to one of the extremes. And I have seen him grow up, and he's not an extreme type of person. He grew up in Colorado. For those of you that don't know Colorado, Colorado is very much like in the middle, like we're the largest unaffiliated voter, we lack of oxygen, there's marijuana, yeah, whatever. I mean, Colorado is very much like, yeah, live and let live. So he is in a market where there's an extreme type of market. And he tells his mother, he does, this is the hardest thing because these people, I mean, I have the mic and they're spilling the stuff, and he does, I want to whip out my phone, go to Wikipedia and say, here, you're wrong, but he doesn't. And he says that him doing that has helped him understand the extremes. So he doesn't get as hyper about it. He does, I understand why they're making that decision. And that's something I would ask you to do. You have a better understanding. That doesn't mean you're going to agree. You think you're going to agree? No. I mean, they're like idiots. I mean, that's okay. I mean, I'm glad that you think like that. I'm not ever going to think like that. And that's the problem we have in this world, that we want for everybody to agree with us. Actually, what you want is for people to understand your viewpoint. That's it. That doesn't mean that they agree. Okay. Anybody else? I think there was somebody back there. Yeah, I think Laura over there. Oh, I do? Okay, so I'll take one virtual. Okay. Thank you for letting me know.
So I'm Aurélie Richard with SNC Electric. I just something that occurred to me. I was linking what you're talking about with what Amy talked to us about, right? And just highlighting that your saboteurs might get you stuck in one of those categories. I'm a hyper vigilant, so I'll definitely get stuck in the assessing situation and strategies, because I'll tell you everything that's going to go wrong over and over and over again. Right? So just linking. I mean, I don't know, Amy, if that makes sense, right? But there's a linkage between what we're talking about here in the natural tendencies.
Totally. When I was listening to Amy's talk, I was like, oh my God, she and I should go on the road together. She should start it and then look at this. But the key thing here is, do not act like you're Wikipedia. Let that be somebody else's job. And that's the thing, that we want to make decisions and we want it to be perfect. What did I say about perfectionism? It's never going to work. Being perfect is not the thing to be. The thing to be is that people respect you and people can say, she makes decisions effectively. That's it. That's all you want. Peace out. I'm done. I mean, drop the mic and say, call me later when you need me. I mean, we're done. That's a key thing with that. Yes. And the mic at the Zoom call. Yes, go ahead.
So we had a question earlier on asking, how do you network when you have social anxiety?
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's a difficult one. So a couple things. Let me talk virtually first. When you have social anxiety, it is easier to do it virtually because you can actually turn off your video. But if you're going to turn off your video, make sure that what people see is your face. They still see a picture of you. Don't turn off your video and it just says your name, or worse yet, my biggest pet peeve. People turn off their video and it's a black screen. Then I wonder, are they still connected? So that will be one in terms of the social anxiety, doing it virtually. If you have to do it in person, I would recommend get a buddy. Have a buddy with you, and many times your buddy knows, and your buddy can take over and start, and add something to the conversation. But it's very difficult. The social anxiety is something extremely difficult. Thank you for that question. Is there another one? No. Okay, perfect. Okay. So let me go forward, and now let's talk about what is an influencer in business. Who would one define to me an influencer? I've already given you hints throughout my talk. Who would want to define that? What is an influencer? A trusted expert. Who else? Somebody that's respected. Okay. Who else? Yes.
Someone that has the ear of, or is the ear for others.
Yes, it's the ear for others. One more. Anybody wants to add? Yes. Diverse perspective. That's a key one. So I mentioned to you when I went to Silicon Valley, I was at the end of my corporate world, I ended up in the telecom industry. That moved me from New York City to Denver. Then I started in Denver and then I got moved to Silicon Valley. And I was working for more of a cable operator doing the last mile to get high-speed internet into like organizations, agencies, etc. When I started working there, I had moved from Denver. I'm in Silicon Valley. I reported to the CEO. I'm in the C-suite. And I go in, it's my first day, and to talk to the CEO. I have known the CEO. He and I had worked together in Denver. So it was him who brought me to this. And we're talking, and he's giving me all this stuff. And he says, Elizabeth, this is the objectives, blah, blah. Remember what we want. This in 2 years, we're going to be sold. So we all can like get out of here. So that was the main thing. We got that we were only going to be there from 18 months to 24 months to sell the company. We accomplished that. So at the end, I looked at him and said, hey, Jonathan, and he doesn't mind me using his name. I said, hey, Jonathan, I have one last question. He says, yeah. I said, who is somebody I should know here that is not on your team? Who is like an influencer, somebody that they have their ear and you go to that person. He says, oh yeah, Richard. I said, oh, Richard, who's Richard? He says, oh, he's the server engineer. I'm like, server engineer? He says, oh yeah, he's in the server room. Go and tell him that I asked him for you to meet with him. I go to see Richard. I find out but my first meeting with Richard is I found out about him, his wife, his kids, his grandkids. I mean, what he liked to drink, the coffee, blah, I mean, everything. Very nice guy. And he says, oh my God, yeah, sure, not a problem. Richard was instrumental. I used to have to do town hall meetings and concerning the business and everything. Richard would go to the town hall meetings, and then afterwards, I would go to his server room, and he would sit me there and inform me how I screwed up or did not screw up. Because he had the ear from everybody. He would get all the information. I was extremely successful because of Richard. He was the engineer that had the pulse on the entire business. He would send me emails and say, hey, Elizabeth, we need to talk. Oh God, I hated those emails because I knew what it was. Go and put on my flats and we're going to go for a little walk in Mountain View, California, because he's going to tell me what I did wrong. But he was good about doing, you know, I like this worked and let me tell you why this worked, this did not work, and let me tell you why this not work. That is an influencer. I mean, he was incredible. I don't know how he knew everybody, but he did. And that's a key one. Find that influencer wherever you go. And a key thing about some benchmarks about influencers, and this, he had all of this. He was extremely personable. Richard was the one that would walk into a room and the room would change vibes because of him. Because what he talked, I mean, he was like, oh my God, somebody just walked in. Someone who's agreeable, sociable, and pleasant. He also was aligned and relatable. What other adjectives would you, how many of you know of an influencer like Richard? What adjectives would you add to that person, to being an influencer? Anybody would want to add an adjective other than the ones I mentioned? Yes. Listening. Richard was an excellent listener. Who else? Yes. Exactly. A lot. I mean, Richard knew everything. I mean, he was a server engineer. When you're working in telecom, the person that runs the server knows everything. Trust me, they can take you to jail. They know everything. Somebody over here? Yes. Trustworthy. That's a great one. That you can trust this person, that this person is not going to be any harshness of you. Yes.
I would say open or inclusive.
Key one, open or inclusive. And that's what Richard was. he really, when I walked into his server room, I said, hey, I'm the new hire for Jonathan, blah, blah. He says, oh yeah. I mean, he pulled out a seat. Oh, sit down. I was like, oh Lord. And basically I was there for like over 45 minutes because he really wanted to get to know me. And yeah, okay. Well, I'm sorry, I did not look over. Yeah, virtual, go.
We have a few. We have inclusive, honest, approachable, trustworthy, easy to talk to, present in the moment, and curious.
Let me use the last three. Easy to talk to, present in the moment. When I would talk to Richard, it was all about me, and curious. He was curious to see how I was going to help him or how I was going to help other people. He would tell me this, and then he would say, how do you think you're going to approach it next time? He would ask me that question. How do you think you will approach it next time? And then I would say to him, he says, do you want some advice? And he will give me the advice. It was a beautiful thing how Richard did it. I'm still in touch with Richard. He's retired and having a great time. And he still smiles because he says everybody in the C-suite is still friends with him. Actually, when I go to the San Francisco Bay Area, I will go out to dinner with Richard and his family because it's like he was so instrumental in my success professionally towards the end of my career in Fortune 100 companies. So that's a key thing. Remember, influencers are extremely important. Like I said to you, it's one of the segments of your networking. Start finding those influencers because they will make you better leaders. And then how do you know you achieve success as an influencer? And I can tell you, Richard did all of this. Basically, he contributed all the time. Not only for me, he contributed for the people that he heard concerning what they had some concerns. He was contributing for the well-being of those individuals and also for them to feel as part of this organization. They're ready to inspire and to work on the next step. Remember how I mentioned to you that he says, how can I help you? He will say that. He says, what do you think you're going to do next? How can I help you? Hey, do you mind if I give you some insights here? Give you some recommendations? And you know what? Every recommendation he gave me, he was dead on, even if I did not agree on the recommendation. It's sort of scary that happened. And last but not least, people look out for these leaders and make decisions based on their work and guidance. A lot of my decisions, I would say it was always a joke. Jonathan would look at me and says, where are you going? I said, what do you think you're going to do? Oh, yeah. Because I had to make a decision. And I was going like down to the basement. You know, I mean, poor guy did not even have like window or anything. It was like down to the basement in the dungeon and like walk in, knock the door. Hey, Richard. He does, oh, yeah. I said, I have to make a decision. He says, come into my kingdom. He would say that to me. Come into my kingdom. Let's go ahead and see what decision you need to make. And it was amazing because the other thing about him, he was trustworthy. He would not leave the room and go and tell people, oh, the head of business development comes to me and tells, you know, and I can tell you what's going to happen next. Never. That's a key thing about influencers. They do not go and toot their own horn and say, oh, I have the ear of the CEO. Oh, I have the ear of the CMO. They do not do that. So that's a key one when it comes to influencers. So putting it all together, because I want to give you some time to also ask me questions. This is the bottom line. We talked about inclusive, we talked about being an agile leader, and we talked about being an influencer. Basically, how I view them, they're the main ingredients. You need to keep those in mind every day. Every day you're going through your career, you need to figure out, how can I be more inclusive? How can I be a more agile leader when I'm making decisions? How can I be an influencer or have an influencer that's going to help me make the decisions? Because remember, you're going to make the decisions at 60%. Do you agree? Okay, you're not going to wait to perfection. We're not waiting to perfection. We don't have time to wait for perfection, because at the end, your actions is the recipe that's going to give you the success. So you have the ingredients. Now you have to put it all together, which is your actions. And at the end, you're going to be successful. And success means that other people will notice. Other people are going to notice. And you know how they're going to notice? They're going to notice, wow, she's good at making decisions. Wow, she really managed that project quite effectively. Wow, she really has people, great people on her team. All that is results of being inclusive, of being an agile leader, and also about knowing influencers and being an influencer if you have to be. Final product is that effective leadership. Once you're an effective leader, when people say, you do not want people to say, oh, I like Elizabeth. What you're thriving for is, I respect Elizabeth because she knows how to make decisions. She moves the project forward. So let's go ahead. She rocks and rolls it. Or, you know, if you want to say she's wonderful making all these decisions. Do not go for like. Many times us women, we're like, oh, I want people to like me. That's one thing that I do a lot of coaching with women. They're like, well, I just want to be like, scratch that from your vocabulary. This is not about likeness. Now, at your family, your friends, yeah, I mean, come on, be nice there. But when it comes professionally, you do not need to be liked. Okay. So with that, I want you to right now, for you to write down one thing you're going to commit to for the rest of this year that you're going to do when it comes to being, if it's an inclusive approach, if it's an agile approach, if it's an influencing approach, one thing you're going to do that you're going to say, Elizabeth, I'm going to work on that. I'm going to work maybe on getting more decision makers on my networking, circle. Or I'm going to work on the fact that I'm going to make decisions with only 60% of the information. Whatever it is, I want you to write that down. And I want you to take it with you and at least read it once a week until December 31st. I'm very much into the more you read it and the more you look at it, it will happen. So take a minute to do that. And then we'll wrap it up. 2 minutes, yeah. So now that you have written it down, I will recommend when you go back to your office, whoever you consider somebody close to you professionally, send them that message and say, hey, I just came from the Chicago network and I was part of this talk. And this is what I'm committing to do for the rest of the year. I just wanted to share with you, and maybe you can ask me how I'm doing with that. Just accountability really, really helps in terms of that. So with that, I would love to connect with all of you. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm actually quite active in LinkedIn. And I want to thank you, but at the same time, I want to open it up for any questions. And what I want to say is, this is a room of powerful women. I am already over the edge in terms of age. I'm done with corporate America and everything. When I was there, I would always consider myself, me, myself, and I, because I was the only woman, the only Latina, and the only one with an accent. Let me say to you, it is a pleasure to see a room of powerful women this big in front of me, because when I was in corporate America, rooms like this did not exist. We have the numbers, ladies. Let's kick some butt. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. That was a really inspiring talk. And one question that I have, though, that you didn't really mention is the aspect of sponsorship and the importance of sponsorship as a leader, I guess. And could you talk a little bit about that too?
That's a great question. When I talk more about networking, and I mentioned the first segment is decision makers. That's why you have the decision maker segment, because that's when you look for people that can mentor you, and people, hopefully, if they're in your same organization, see if they can sponsor you. There are 3 things you need to have in your professional career life: sponsors, mentors, and coaches. Please invest in coaching. I know I'm a coach, but please, I'm amazed that we don't invest in coaches. Let me inform you that your male counterparts, they all invest in coaching and they do not tell anybody. Do you know the men I coach, I cannot say their name. Okay, some names you will recognize. I cannot say their name. Like, you're not telling anybody that you're coaching me. I said, no, because you're wonderful. You can figure it out all by yourself. I don't tell them that, but I'm like, but that's the key thing. The difference between men and women, men invest in themselves since the beginning. Women do not. So sponsor, mentor, coach. And it shouldn't be the same person over and over again. Like, oh, I have a mentor for 20 years, please. I mean, it should be like every couple years, you know, it's like a new salad. You create a new salad of people. Who else? In the back, there's, and then I know I have to go.
My glasses.
Elizabeth, who are your saboteurs?
Who are my what?
Saboteurs.
Oh, so what are my saboteurs? Okay, I will admit it. Can't believe it. Oh, is this being recorded? No, hopefully not. But is it being recorded on Zoom? Oh God, okay. Well, this better not come out in LinkedIn. Actually, I don't think I'm good enough. I actually think that somebody is better than I am. So I do what Amy says. I hit a pause and I do, it doesn't get any better than this. So I say that to myself, it doesn't get any better than this. And if you don't like it, your loss, baby. Peace out. Or I would say in Spanish, vaya con Dios, go with God. When I say vaya con Dios, peace out. That's my peace out. But it's taken me decades to get to this. So.
Okay, peace out is where I'm calling it.
Sorry. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Okay, wow, we could have had just her the entire session. All the rest of our speakers are extraordinary, but thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know many of you have lots of questions for Elizabeth. We are delighted that our speakers are actually staying with us throughout the day. So hunt her down, hunt Amy down. I think Tamika may be leaving shortly after she speaks. So you may have to really hunt her down as soon as she's done speaking. But please feel free to talk to these women. They're here to support you. They're here to answer any questions. But, you know, I think those 3 lessons, you know, act inclusively, portray agility, and be the influencer. They are outstanding things for us to constantly remember. And I love the fact that she was being so honest about her saboteurs. Imposter syndrome is very real, and women have it all the time. You have CEOs that feel it to the very lowest level of, or someone starting out in their career. So you are not alone in feeling those feelings. Enjoy your very short break because we're going a little bit over, but take a break and join us back for our next amazing session. Thanks.
So I introduced myself earlier, but I will introduce myself again. Kathy Shearer. I'm the Chicago managing partner for Deloitte, and I have the privilege of introducing our next session, and you are not going to be disappointed. So our next session is on the topic of personal brand. And in today's world of social media, sometimes that term personal brand gets confused with personal branding. And personal branding is actually you creating an image of yourself. It's what you say and what you post about yourself. But your personal brand is what others actually say about you. And having a personal brand really involves understanding your authentic message, who you are, and honing it so everybody else can recognize it and repeat it and talk about you. So we're about to experience a discussion on the topic of personal brand, and it's going to be between our moderator, Dr. Suzette McKinney. And Suzette is actually a Chicago Network member. And joining her will be my good friend, my former partner from Deloitte, Tamika Tremaglio. And she's now the executive director of the NBA Players Association. And these 2 accomplished ladies actually have a lot in common. They're, as you can see over here, are both beautiful, stunning, poised, confident. They're also very highly educated and successful career women. And I would say about both of them, they both have a very positive and strong personal brand that you're going to hear more about. So let me just tell you a little bit about them before we begin. Dr. Suzette McKinney is currently a principal and director of life sciences at the real estate developer Sterling Bay. She's leading a strategy to expand Sterling Bay's life sciences footprint. Prior to that, she was the CEO of the Illinois Medical District, which is a medical zone on the near west side of Chicago, and it encompasses 4 hospitals and over 40 healthcare related organizations. And during her tenure as the IMD CEO, she was also appointed by Governor Pritzker to assist during 2020 with the planning for alternative care facilities during the COVID-19 crisis. Dr. McKinney holds an undergraduate degree in biology from Brandeis University. She holds a master's in public health from Benedictine University and a doctorate from the University of Illinois at Chicago School of Public Health. She's also the board chair for Thresholds, which is a nonprofit committed to supporting people with mental illness and substance abuse disorders. Suzette is also the proud mom of a daughter who's an accomplished student athlete at Villanova. She's a polished public health executive. She's a compassionate community leader and a very proud parent. A couple fun facts about her. She's been known to skydive at 15,000 feet. And she's a risk taker. I didn't know this about this one. And she's also gone through some intense military training exercises and has an amazing photo. So asked to see that. Okay, so next up, Tamika Tremaglio, the executive director of the NBA Players Association. Prior to that, Tamika was my partner at Deloitte, and she was the managing partner for our Greater Washington practice, which had over 15 and is growing still, 15,000 professionals when Tamika was leading that practice. And she also advised clients on risk and financial advisory topics. Tamika has a degree in business and finance from Mount St. Mary's University, an MBA from the University of Baltimore, and a JD from the University of Maryland. Tamika is married to a retired special agent, Greg, and she's also mom to 2 boys, college student Roke and high school senior Reese. And in addition to being wife and mom, part of Tamika's personal brand, and this one of the things I think is so amazing about Tamika, is spreading kindness and love. She's on the board of an organization called Born This Way Foundation. It was started by Lady Gaga's mother, who's actually a friend of Tamika's. And this organization is really just all about promoting big acts and small acts of kindness to one another to bring about a better world, which I love. A couple fun facts about Tamika. She's an amazing cook. She makes all kinds of stuffed hams. I read about you, Tamika. I didn't even know that about you during Thanksgiving. So apparently this is a Maryland tradition. And what I know about though, she makes about 100 Kahlua cakes, at least, I think, at the holidays. And I happen to be on her mailing list for Kahlua cakes. I don't know what my husband would actually do if we ever fall off the mailing list, Tamika. But they are amazing. And oh, I know one other thing too. So the first time I met Tamika, really met you, I think it was virtually. I had just taken on my role as the managing partner March 10th of 2020. Great timing. And so Tamika was already in her role and we were networking and she said, let's have tea. And so we set up this Zoom call or whatever. And then in the mail came this mug and it said tea with Tamika on it. And so I always think about you, Tamika, when I use my Tamika mug, but I could go on and on. I probably have way gone over my time. So without further ado, Suzette McKinney and Tamika Tremaglio.
Thank you, Kathy. I was thinking, I already won. We're here.
Hi, everybody. Listen, Tamika and I just met last week when we did our prep call, but I told her I feel like I have known her forever. So I'm really, really excited to have this conversation with her today. So welcome back to Chicago. I know you've been here many times, but it's great to have you back. We have a lot to cover, so I'm just going to jump right into these questions. The one thing I would like to say before I start, ladies, I hope you are enjoying this morning. My first experience with the Chicago Network was when I attended this very event
alongside my executive coach in 2012. 5 years later, I became a member of the network, and I have learned so much about just professionalism and how to guide myself through business. So please, please, please take those notes and keep them, because you will refer back to them later. Okay, so Tamika, why don't we start with, I'll just ask you to talk a little bit about yourself, your background maybe, and your family, where you grew up. I think it would be great for the ladies that are here today to hear about you personally before we dive right into the professional aspect of who you are.
Absolutely. Thank you. And first of all, thank you so very much for having me. I will say, just being in this room, I was like, oh my gosh, a room of women. It's like chicken soup for the soul. So I am really grateful to be here. And Suzette is correct that we met for the first time by Zoom last week. And I felt like I'd known her forever. And even coming here, I was like, we have so much in common. Then I heard skydiving. I was like, oh, maybe not. I'm like, that I won't be doing. So anyway, I will just give you a quick background. First of all, I grew up in a really small town in Southern Maryland, really where there was not a whole lot. There wasn't even a real shopping mall, quite honestly. And so if you can think about tobacco fields, Chesapeake Bay, that's basically where I grew up. Not a lot of exposure. And so, but I had a really strong mother who was very clear that you always had to exceed expectations, right? I'm sure very unfamiliar to all of you in this room. But she would say to me, when people are running, you know, you should be sprinting, whatever's happening, you need to do more. And I remember a gentleman, his name was George Fraser, talking a little bit about what it meant, particularly for someone like me. And he described the iPhone, which now is, you know, almost 15 years old. And he said that people would actually stand in line for hours for the iPhone because it was amazing, right? And they would actually even throw away other phones. And I was like, that's it. You have to be amazing. So I tell my boys every day, you get to choose, right? You can decide if you're just going to be there or if you're going to be amazing, if you're really going to show up. And that's what my mother instilled in me. So going on to school, I really thought I was going to be a lawyer at the age of 5. So clearly, you know, it's like check the box. You get out of college, you're going to go to law school. And then I really missed the numbers. And then I looked around Washington, D.C., and 1 in 4 professionals were lawyers. Not that it isn't amazing, because it is clearly incredibly amazing, but I thought, what do I need to do that's a little bit different, right? And most people would go to law school to avoid the numbers. I actually really like the numbers. So I thought, well, let's do this JD MBA. Now, very popular, 27 years ago, not so popular. And so I decided that I would do that. One, because I figured I would find a job doing something, but not really knowing what to do. So I started in the Big 4, Big 5 at that time, at KPMG. I saw KPMG was sponsor here as well. It was a phenomenal experience. And I started in the tax practice. Wasn't quite what I think I had in mind, kind of long-term. I thought I was going to be doing transfer pricing cases. I was doing more corporate tax returns, but then I had the ability to transfer into a forensic practice, which I loved, right? It was like putting pieces of a puzzle together every day. And it was exciting for me to be able to do that. But right around the time of Enron, so Kathy, Susie know about this, it made it really difficult to do anything outside of audit and tax within the Big 5 environment. And so it was time to sort of figure out what to do next. And so I went to a firm called Huron Consulting Group that Susie Gallagher was a part of, had started here in the Chicago area, but they didn't have an office in Washington. And quite honestly, that was pretty scary to me, because I had grown up now in this big firm that everybody recognized the name. And I was now going to this firm Huron that I would have to decipher every time I said the name, what we actually did. Little did I know, however, that was a great opportunity for me to create my own personal brand. When you work for a KPMG or a Deloitte or whatever, who sort of stands on its own, you become part of that, right? And so you don't focus so much on who you are. So for me, it was the first time I had the opportunity to really experience that. I then fast forward 9 years later, came to Deloitte, which was amazing. One of the best experiences I've ever had in my life, partly because they really gave me the opportunity to grow. Certainly at Huron, one of the things that I found is I got outside of my comfort zone when I had Gary Holdren say to me, do you want to come to the Masters? And I was like, I don't know how to play golf. How am I going to figure this out? I was nervous, but it was an opportunity. It was really giving me exposure to something that I hadn't had the opportunity to do. And so when I came to Deloitte, I almost felt like I was taking a step back because I was our CEO of our advisory practice. And I was coming in as a line partner. And as a woman, you're slightly defensive because you're thinking, now I got to prove myself all over again, right? You spent the last 20 years doing this. Now you're starting again. And as a result of that, you to some extent didn't always exhibit the best behavior, right? Because you felt a little defensive and like you got to lay out your credentials everywhere you go and tell people why you deserve to be at the table. But the thing that I was very clear about when I came to Deloitte is that I wanted to move up. I wanted to do more. I wanted to have an impact. And I think that they did an excellent job of giving me those opportunities. So I know Kathy already told you that I became our managing partner of Deloitte, which was our largest office here in the US. In fact, maybe one of our largest offices in the globe. It was a tremendous opportunity, but it was also the first time in my life that I really felt like I was able to make an impact where I could make a difference. And I had amazing clients, including the MBPA, which is where I am now. I started working with them when doing a forensic accounting investigation, and fast forward, continued to be their advisor for the next 10 years. And here we were sitting in COVID, and it was time for them to decide on a new executive director. And I thought, what do I want to do next? Where can I live my purpose, right? Where can I live this life of significance that, quite frankly, up to this point, I had the opportunity to prepare for, unbeknownst to me, but truly had the opportunity to prepare.
That's fantastic. I mean, just listening to you talk about your career journey, I picked up a couple of nuggets already. First of all, are you going to be there or are you going to be amazing? So I'm going to have to, adopt that myself and share that with my own daughter, but also how you have leveraged your career as a continuous stepping stone. So I think the next question that I would ask is, was there a particular turning point in your life where you decided that you wanted to go into leadership, or what was it about leadership that attracted you to it? And how would you describe the way that doors have continuously opened for you?
Yeah, so, I will have to say I was not intentional about being a leader. What I was intentional about was serving others, right? And so to some extent, it can show up in all forms. So I had no problem being a follower when it required that you were a follower. I had no problem being a teammate when you were better off as a part of a team. I had no problem being a leader, right? And I think having had the opportunity to experience all of those, sort of you tend to gravitate to where your strengths are. Sure. And my strengths were typically in leading, but it wasn't because that's what I set out to do. That was never the intention. It was really about, how can I serve purpose? How can I serve people? What is it that I can do where I can make a difference?
I love that. I always say that as leaders, it is our responsibility to reach back and help those that are less fortunate than we are. So I'm going to put that in the parking lot because we're going to come back to this idea of service and civic duty. But let's dive into the executive presence aspect of our talk. So what do you believe is the importance of executive presence, and how do you build it?
So I will start by saying that I think to some extent, executive presence perhaps may be misunderstood at times, right? We know it as this like X factor. And quite frankly, for the first 10, 15 years of my career, executive presence was something that they would say women didn't have so that they couldn't get a particular role, right? Nobody could describe it. Nobody could tell you really what it was. But the truth is, to some extent, it wasn't masculine, right? That's really where it was coming out. The reality is, however, is it was really about how you show up, right? How you exude your confidence in the room, how you make sure that your voice is heard. That's what it became for me. And being surrounded by people that made a point to want to hear from you or to make you feel like you were valued or heard, that helped tremendously. But I also think it's a learned behavior, right? Because to some extent, you have to sort of build this level of confidence. You have to be in rooms like this where you're learning from people who have had those similar experiences. So I really think that's how you go about building it, by example too, as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So the players have called you a next generation type of leader. what do you look for in identifying and developing the next group of leaders? Because we hear a lot about, leaders develop their teams, they develop others. Tell us what you look for.
Yeah, so you are right. First of all, I work with an amazing group of men that I think all of you know primarily for their athleticism. But the reality is they are incredibly generous. They are incredibly kind. They are incredibly giving and compassionate. And as you all know, have used their voice to really move the mark in terms of social equity. But what they also are very interested is, how do they build wealth? How are they moving from making money to having money, right? So that's what they look for in who their next leader is, because it's critical, particularly as we're going through our next CBA negotiation. When I'm thinking about the next generation of leader, I'm also looking at how is that person serving their purpose, right? Because the reality is, we all know that things have shifted a bit, right? People are doing the things that help them to reach their own individual goals, not necessarily to make money. There was a time when you went to school, you got out of school to make money. Now people are really focused on how can they actually build their purpose. And who else are you bringing along? So for me, and I'm finding this very interesting because I grew up in a corporate world where there weren't very many people that looked like me. So my goal was to get more women up, to get more people of color up, right? And so in that environment, that's what I would expect always. But when you don't grow up in that environment, you become intimidated and wonder, like, what is their objective? Are they really trying to help me? Are they really not trying to help me? Are you receiving their help in the way in which they intended? Because that's what we do, right? And so when I'm looking at this next generation of leader, I'm looking at who wants to serve other people, but then who's willing to bring other people along with them.
Right.
That's what I think is really critical.
Absolutely. So one of the buzzwords that we hear in our society is, self-care. And that typically centers around how we are caring for ourselves on a personal level. But since we're talking professional today, and you just spoke about how you think about developing the next generation of leaders, talk to us about what you do for yourself to continually develop yourself as a leader, to continue to grow and expand all the things that you're involved with.
Yeah, so I really believe in continuous learning. And so even sitting here today, there were a lot of things that I took away. The one over on perfection, I was like, oh my gosh, she's so right. I don't have to be perfect. This doesn't have to look right. Don't have to do things a certain way. Like sometimes you got to step back. So I am continuously learning. And I consider it to be a productive day if I have learned something new. So I finally got to take a vacation in August, and my goal was that I was going to read a book that was going to help me to be better when I came back to work, right? I know that doesn't sound as exciting, but I was really pretty excited about this. I read the book, The 5 a.m. Club by Robin Sharma. I don't know if anybody's read it, but I am a night owl. Right? So I'm the 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. Latoya, who's my chief of staff, she is 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock responding to messages. And I am not a morning person, but I realized that I needed some more time in my day. I'm, as I mentioned, coming up on CBA, and I'm like, I got a lot to do. How can I make more time? And someone recommended to me, in fact, one of our brand new agents recommended the 5 a.m. book. I read that book. It was a game changer, right? That's always the case for me. I also read The Energy Bus. I actually listened to that one, if I may be honest. I am constantly looking for ways to improve what I'm doing. And then I pass it along to other people. I think I've already gotten 10 copies of the 5 a.m. Club that I've sent to people. Energy Bus, I've asked people at the office to please read it. I wanted to hand out tickets and I thought it might look a little corny, so I decided not to do that. But it is, to me, so important that we are learning. And the way in which we're also learning is by sharing that information with others so that we can reinforce it, right? So the reality is somebody's probably going to call me on it when they say, why are you texting me at midnight, are you going to be able to get up at 5 a.m.? Like, it's a good reminder, right? That's part of the self-care piece too. Because, you know, on the plane, when they say put your mask on first, I recognize I've got to do that because I'm not good for anybody when I'm tired, when I'm not focused. You're aggravated, you're frustrated. And I even have to say sometimes to people like, I'm really tired. I am not going to be at my best. I'm not going to make the right decision. I may not respond to things in the way in which you need to respond. And the one thing that we have to do is like forgive ourselves too for those things. That's about self-care as well.
I appreciate that though. And, you know, thank you for letting me know that I am not the only one that just struggles with finishing a book.
Yeah.
I have 6 books on my nightstand. I've read the beginning of all of them, but my goal is to eventually go on vacation and finish a book.
Yes,
So
it was.
thank
It
you
was
for
like,
saying
that's
that.
what I'm going to do. That's a good vacation.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so empowerment. Let's talk about empowerment for a little bit. What does empowerment mean to you? And why is it important for leaders to empower those around them?
So first of all, you have to appreciate that you aren't going to get to the next level if you don't have someone else to replace you, right? So on day one, you should be thinking about what can I do? How can I empower someone else to be great, to do more things, right? And so it's critical that we're doing that. The one thing I will say, however, usually they sort of get a hint that maybe you're bringing them along, you're empowering them, right? The challenge, however, is that when you're in that role as these next generation of leaders, you see the horizon of what you may be able to do. I had a really good friend tell me one day, do not focus on the next job so much that you screw up the job that you're in. Right?
Amen.
Those weren't the exact words she used, by the way. And it has always resonated with me because in my mind, I was like, I want to be CEO. I want to be managing partner. And then you forget about all the things that you have to do, right? You have to still do your day job and empower other people to learn and know about what you're doing so that then you can move along. But let's be very clear. You're not going to move along if you aren't doing your day job well. So you've got to remember sort of enjoying this journey as you're going along, right? As opposed to like, what's the next level? How am I going to get there? I think that's that's really, really critically important. And you do have to bring other people on.
Well, you know, I think why don't we shake this up a little bit? I'm
All
ready
right.
to have a little fun. How about you?
Absolutely.
Are you guys gonna come along on a little journey with us? All right. So, you know, we're talking about executive presence. I think as women, we often struggle with how we show up in the workplace and what we do in the workplace. So why don't we, you know, I wrote a few points down that I would like us to, you know, just think about. So showing up, wardrobe, you know, dress versus suit, heels versus flats, color versus all black. Let's talk about it because is she
All
not
black.
fabulous? Look how she showed up
All
today.
black.
I told her she wore the perfect outfit for where I wanted to go. So let's hear about it from your perspective.
Well, I will say, first of all, it is incredibly challenging. And now in this world that I'm in, where I came out of wearing a suit every day, I am constantly thinking about what I should be wearing. But it started a long time ago because the reality is when I started my career, and God, I now feel like I'm really dating myself, but everyone who was successful, they were primarily men, and they were wearing shirts with cufflinks and neckties and embroidering their, that's what I was wearing because that's what they were wearing. Like I may have had on a skirt, but I was wearing the white shirt and the necktie, et cetera, right? And I remember actually this woman came into this meeting and she had like flowers on her dress. And I thought, oh my God, is she going to church? She can come into work like this. Because I had actually never seen someone be really feminine at work. And the moment that I saw her, it just allowed me then, right? So sometimes when you think about what you're doing, like if people can see it, then they think they can be it. So by showing up in your authentic self, then you allow other people to show up too. And so it is hard, it's challenging. And I remember day one, LaToya said to me, by the way, Tamika, you can't repeat your clothes. because if you do and you're photographed, then they're going to see you the next time in your same clothes. And I thought, oh my God, like I can't even imagine what that's like, because that's not the world I lived in either. Like I just change a shirt, you do this, and you, by the way, spend enough money on your clothes that you feel like you want to wear them again, right? They're not disposable. But she was absolutely right. So it's a different world that you're living in. And oh, by the way, I went to Cairo 2 weeks ago, fully prepared my suitcase to read that you have to wear Nikes. And I was like, Nikes? I didn't bring Nikes with me. Now, mind you, I have tons of Nikes, but I didn't have them with me. Like little things. So you have to ask the right questions, but still maintain your authentic self. I think now at the office, they're like, just wear whatever you want, because you're going to show up however you're going to want to show up anyway.
Right.
But I think it's really important that you are your authentic self, whatever that means to you.
So many of us work in male-dominated fields, or at least we work with a lot of men. So when you walk into the room, let's talk about the handshake. So we walk in, firm handshake, right?
Firm handshake. Although sometimes, people go like this.
Right.
They want to put their hand over yours, show their dominance,
Right.
all those things.
I was saying to Tamika last week on our call, my largest pet peeve when I walk into a room and I shake someone's hand is the limp hand, because it shows a lack of confidence. But tell us what you think.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think how you show up is critically important. I start hugging people, right? And they're like, oh, she wants to hug us. That to me is for a lot of men in particular, is very uncomfortable, right? Because now that means that you feel like you can get into someone's space, right? So it's a matter of how you want to show up, but it's how you want to present yourself. Now I don't do it all the time, but under different circumstances, I push it a little bit.
Yeah. And what about eye contact? So you're talking to someone, where are your eyes? Are you over here? Are you, what are we doing with the eyes?
Yes. So I think there was someone who asked the question about being having social anxiety, right? Yes. And that would mean ideally that they're probably not going to look at the person. Mm-hmm. When that happens, it's uncomfortable to the person who they're speaking to, right? Yeah. Or I don't know if any of you have been in a situation where you're talking to someone and then you're looking over to see who else is coming in, and then immediately it shuts down the conversation with them, right? Or the fact that if I was standing here in this room and I was only looking at this corner, then I lose the rest of the people that are over here, right? So it's important that we are making eye contact in some way.
Absolutely. Okay, here's one. I think everybody has heard about this. You walk into a room, there's a conference table, and then there are tables along the wall. Where do you sit?
At the table.
Amen.
Yes. Yes.
And yes, that deserves applause. Yeah. You sit at the table. And for anyone who's wondering why, do you want to?
Yeah, because quite frankly, if you need to show up, you need to know when you walk in there that you deserve a seat at the table. Right. And that you should be sitting at the table. The chairs that are in the back are for overflow. You're on time. You want to sit at the table. You want your voice to be heard. So it's critically important that you do that. I also will tell you that oftentimes, even when you're in a room like this and you're trying to figure out where do you sit at the table, because that was one of the things I was thinking about before, men, they like to sit next to you, right? So if there's someone that you want to impact that happens to be of the opposite sex, sit next to them. Don't sit across from them. Women, we like to sit across from each other because we want to make eye contact. We want to understand more about them. So it's really important that we do that. And then even a stance, I remember, again, constant learning, but being at this conference, Corporate Council Women of Color, and this woman came up on stage and she said, when you walk in a room, you should stand as wide as you can. And I was like, wow, because you want to be bigger, right? Because if you go in a room and you're kind of quiet and move yourself in, then you become smaller. So she said, make the space as big as you can. And that to me is very, very true, because when you walk into a space, if you sort of spread out, when someone spreads out at the table, they're like, wow, that's the same thing that happens when you walk into a room.
And can I add something to that?
Please.
Say you walk into a room and it's not a conference table and it's theater style seating, front or back. I choose to go to the front of the room, because I think that that's another display of confidence, right? What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree. You're right. It's absolutely right. That's where you want to be, where you can be seen, where you can actually say things that are valuable.
Okay, now this next one I think may be a little bit sensitive, and so no harm to anyone. But I think it's important for us to talk about the voice. You know, a lot of times as women, we want to disarm the men. We speak in a sing song, you know. What do you think about the voice?
Yes, I do think the voice is critical, but I will also say what I don't like is that people don't recognize that you can hear a smile, right? So for example, when someone is more high tone and more harmonious, they're typically smiling, right?
Right.
There's a limit to that, right? Because you don't want to be overly excited, like, I'm so happy to be here, right? That's not quite where you want to be. But at the same time, you also know when you call someone on the phone and they say hello, then you don't even want to talk to them, right? So smiling when you're on the phone, I remember saying it to like my intern 25 years ago, like every time I call you, you're not smiling. And she's like, what is she talking about? Like she's on the phone, but you can hear it in their voice. So I think you have to use your voice properly. I think you have to be loud so you can be heard because you don't want to be too quiet.
Right.
You don't want to be sing-song, like you said. I love that you mentioned that because it's not something that I really thought about. But I do think you have to show up, and whatever that means, however you show up, that's what you need to make sure you're doing, in whatever voice, because it still has to be authentic, right? So I think that's important.
So speaking of showing up and how you show up, one of the things that I always tell my mentees is that we have to work to build our internal confidence. And I always say, it's different. The way we do that is different for everyone. For some of us, we write affirmations on a Post-it and we stick it all over, you know, the mirror in our bedroom and things like that. I don't know if any of you guys used to watch the show Being Mary Jane with Gabrielle Union. Some of us may dance in the mirror. Whatever it is, you know, we have to work to build our internal confidence. But once we've done that work, talk to Mika, talk to all of us about how you walk in the room and exude all of the confidence that you've developed and built up for yourself. How do you put your confidence on display and just have that be a part of who you are, but in a way that continues to help you, you know, express your professional brand?
I don't know the answer to that question. But what I will say is that I think it is so important that it's coming from an authentic place. I mean, truly, you're right. Like, how do you show up in a room? How do you convince other people that you're someone that they want to listen to, right? That's not really where I walk in with that being the intention, but I do appreciate that your time is incredibly valuable. And so if you're going to spend time with us, then I have to make sure that you're hearing something that's going to be valuable to you. You know, oftentimes when we're showing up, we're thinking about us and not so much thinking about the message and what it is that we want to deliver, right? And what they're going to walk away from. And so I think part of showing up, being present, part of showing your confidence, one, you have a little bit of practice in it, right? Yes. But two, you also are making sure you're saying something that's important. You know, the person in the room that just talks to hear themselves talk, right? Versus the person who speaks and everybody stops and listens because, oh, when they say something, it's going to be important. Right. I think that's really where the distinction is. But I will say that I still have jitters. Even when I walked up here just now, I was like, God, there's not a thing on the thing. Does she know how many times I've fallen in any given day? Like, I'm going through all these things in my mind too, just like all of you, still getting butterflies every time. And quite frankly, when the butterflies stop, I'm concerned about that too, because that means I've gotten too comfortable and I'm not growing, right? And so really taking the opportunity to do those things too are critically important.
That's awesome. Thank you. And thank you for—
You're welcome. I got to stand up.
Playing along with my, you know, just desire to have a little bit of fun. So now we will get back to the questions.
And that's more practical, right? Because the truth is, those are the things that people don't talk about a whole lot. So.
And, you know, quite honestly, ladies, that's why I wanted to do that, because I've been to more personal branding sessions than I can imagine. And we never talked about those things. And so thank you again for being willing to do that.
No, absolutely.
Okay. So Kathy, when she introduced you, talked about your personal life a little bit. You're a wife, you're a mother, you're an amazing professional. So let's talk a little bit about women in the workforce.
Oh,
yeah. What goes through your mind when you think of women who have joined, suffered, endured, succeeded, and achieved in the workforce before you?
so I think most of you all know that saying about special place in hell, right? For those women who aren't helping other women. I also have to say it is real too, which I'm ashamed and embarrassed to say, quite frankly. For some reason, sometimes we can't get out of our own way, right? We know that it was really hard for us. And so we want to make sure it's really hard for them, right? Or you don't want to support other women, or you want to hold other women to a standard that you don't even, quite frankly, hold for yourself, right? And to me, that is, I mean, among the worst things that you could ever do, right? We have a duty to help each other. There are not enough of us, and we want to see more women succeed. But instead, when we see other women succeed, we see that as a deficiency that we have. And I'm sure none of you know what I'm talking about, right? But the moment that someone else is doing something that you want to do, instead of looking at them and saying, oh my God, let me be their cheerleader, their ambassador, let me help them, let me lift them up, we think of all of the ways that we can break them down.
Yep.
And so what it does is it makes those people bitter, right? And it makes them less likely to help the next person and the next person. So it really is that we are all standing on shoulders of women who have worked incredibly hard, who've done all of the things that we've done with much less. And it is our duty to make sure that we are doing that for other women as well.
You know, I call that women on women crime.
Yeah.
And it happened to me.
Wow crime. I'm going to start
Yes,
saying that.
women
Wow
on women
crime.
crime. That's what I call it. And I had something happen to me very early on in my career where a woman just stormed into my office and completely tore me down. And in the moment, the only thing that I could think of was, wow, was that necessary? And I made a decision in that moment that there was so much of that going on that I didn't need to contribute to it. So I don't know if any of you noticed this, but as Tamika and I were getting ready to step up on stage, I grabbed her hand and I helped her up onto the stage, because there is no need for us as women to tear one another down, to not help one another. And any way that you can help another woman, no matter how small or how large, is worth it, because you never know what a small gesture will do for that woman's day.
That's right.
So,
And I took her hand because I was scared to death I was going to fall. I was like, she skydives. I better grab her hand.
I didn't even know that about you. But so what about, you know, talking about our roles as wife and mother? What about talking about family life in the workplace? Is it okay? Is it not okay? What are your thoughts there?
So it has transitioned, right? So I will say I was pregnant with my first child at 32. I was almost going to be a director at KPMG, and I didn't want anyone to know. And unfortunately, we lost our first child. And I will tell you, like, to this day, you know, granted, everything happens the way it's supposed to happen, right? But in my mind, I thought, if I had just slowed down, if I had just said to someone like, I really can't fly here, or I really do need to sit down or whatever, because I didn't have any role models that like I saw doing this, being pregnant and making partner. Like in my mind, that just didn't happen. In fact, when I started my career at KPMG, the only women partners all had men's names: Kyle, Tommy, and Barry. And I was like, shit, this is never gonna happen. I'm never gonna get here because I have the wrong name. And Tamika, oh my God, can you imagine? So that is what life was like. Like I just had no one to watch and to see these things happen. it's a pretty tough lesson to learn. Gratefully, I have two beautiful boys, but as a result, I also made it very clear. I would travel with my kids. I would take them to conferences, particularly when you knew they were at the same conferences or coming every year. I grabbed my aunt, my mom in the beginning, the nannies later, and I made it very clear that I was there with my family. They were out at the pool, you were working, but I was there with my family. And I will tell you that people have still said to me to this day that you gave me permission to actually bring my children with me. Because I actually had a partner tell me that he hated kids and he had his own kids. Can you imagine that? But for a man to say that, it seemed totally fine. Like, all I kept thinking is, oh my God, please don't let me be on the same flight as him. Like, just suppose they start to cry, like all of these things. But the reality is we got to show up so that other women can show up. And I love when I see other women doing that, even when it comes to business development. As Kathy and Susie know, we're always out in the market, right? And I remember beginning of my career, someone said, I want you to meet I want you to be responsible for the general counsel at Xerox. Are you kidding me? Like, there is nothing in common with the general counsel at Xerox when I was 28 years old. But that was something and I, of course, tried to figure it out. But the reality is once I figured out that I could actually do things my way, that I could do things that perhaps were more feminine, or I could actually take them to circus or Disney on Ice and have clients who had kids that wanted to spend time with their kids on Saturdays. Like, finding ways to sort of commingle those things made a huge difference. But it's also about seeing other people do that. And I think one of the things that I had mentioned to you earlier, and I want to make sure I don't forget as we were talking through the examples, is the pie, because I always talk about this and I think it's so important. And I'm going to tell you because I'm hoping that you'll tell someone else. And so there's this pie, right? The pie, we all know that, not the 3.14, but the pie. And like someone said, talked about data and how that's me. I have to visualize things in data. But PIE stands for performance, image, and exposure, PIE, right? And women and minorities, and this is according to Carla Harris, who I love, often spend so much time in performance that we forget about image and exposure, right? And so oftentimes we sit and look around the room and we're like, how did Bobby get promoted and I'm doing all the work, right? Because up until this point, up until your career, everything you did was based on a rating. You got an A because you were really good. You got a C when you didn't do so well, right? So we are constantly measuring. I have an Oura Ring, a Fitbit, like that's our life, right? Constantly measuring ourselves. So it's no wonder that we get to the workforce and we're doing the same thing, because that we can quantify. And as a result, we forget all about the image and exposure piece. So what they say is that women spend 90% of their time on performance and leave 10% of their time on image and exposure. The people who are successful spend 10% of their time on performance, 30% of their time on image, and 60% of their time on exposure. Did I get the math right? Yes. That's what is success. And so when we talk about image, we're talking about just exactly the things that you mentioned, Suzette, how we show up, our confidence. It's not your level of attractiveness, et cetera. It's how you're showing up in the room when you talk. Are you clear? Are you concise? Are you making eye contact? Are you doing all of those things, right? And then exposure is critical. When they're going to happy hour, I know you got work to do.
You got to go.
So do they, but you got to go. Because that's where the deals are made. That's where it matters, right? That's where you're getting the exposure. I didn't want to go to the Masters. I was scared to death. Mind you, I love it now and wish someone would invite me. That's the thing, right? But at that time, I was panicked. And I thought, I had too much work to do. And I know what my numbers are and I got to do this. But getting out there made a difference. And all of you that are sitting in this room are already performing. It is the cost of admission for women. Let me just start there for all of you. You wouldn't be where you are if you weren't already really good at what you do. So now take the time and focus on image and exposure, because that's what becomes critically important. That's what moves you to the next level.
Amen. So speaking of the masters, I feel like I'm at the masters of discussion right now, just being able to talk to Tamika. And I want to share that opportunity with all of you. So if any of you have questions for her, think of questions. I have two more. And when we get through my final two, then we'll take a couple from the audience, if that's okay. Okay. So you were just talking about family and wanting to make sure that while you were working, you also wanted to be with your family and include your family. And I think that's wonderful. And that's one of the things that as women, we struggle with in the workplace. But there are so many other things that we also struggle with. What advice and perhaps words of encouragement would you offer professionals that are experiencing unique barriers in their lives? You know, trying to balance work, family, and just other issues that we might be dealing with, specifically women.
Yeah, well, the first thing I would say is there is no work-life balance. So we should just throw it out, right? The reality is that it has to be a work-life blend, right? Because it's never going to be that you can say 4 hours today, I'm going to do this at work, and 4 hours today, I'm going to do this at home. It just does not work. And if we're looking for that balance, we're just going to be always disappointed. We're never going to reach the perfection that we have in our mind. So understanding that it can be a blend and giving yourself permission to make it a blend is critical, right? And that is something that you have to become comfortable with. I will tell you, honestly, I still struggle with it every single day. And now, I mean, at Deloitte, it was a 24-hour-a-day job, 5 days a week, right? We really were pretty persistent about Saturday and Sunday being for family. We know that we had people that were much more productive if they weren't working every single weekend, right?
Yeah.
In my current role, it is 24/7, right? And so what that means is if you're going to fit in family, you got to really fit it in. You're going to have to blend it. And it's hard because you have some people that are like, oh, I can't believe, she brought her family to All-Star, or she did this, or she did that. But the reality is, if you want me 24/7, then you got to get the full package. Now, the great thing is that our players are so family oriented. They struggle, as you saw Tom Brady even talking about recently, right? About this work-life balance. They struggle in the exact same way. In fact, CJ McCollum, the first thing he asked me in the interview is, how do you do all this? He was about to have his first baby and he was thinking, oh boy, how am I going to get this done, right? And the truth is, the way he's going to get it done is he's going to have to blend it together. Right? He's going to have to figure out some things that I can bring my wife to. Now I can bring some things that I can bring my son to. Like, he's going to have to figure it out, because that's the only way in which we can get it done, and get it done in a way in which we survive it. Otherwise, one of them's going to fall, and we need to survive it because we need to be examples for each other.
So thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So one of the things that we touched on earlier, I wanted to come back to it, and it's the idea of giving of ourselves in a civic-minded way. It's no secret that you are very active, not only professionally in your professionalism, but also with volunteering and giving back to others. So the final question that I have is, why do you think taking part in volunteerism is important? Why is it important to you, and how has it impacted your life? And I want to also invite you to talk a little bit about the Be Kind campaign that you're involved in.
Yes, thank you very much. So first of all, I think to whom much is given, much is expected, right? I think, I am incredibly blessed. And so when I think about the things that I can give or offer to other people, I want to make sure that I'm doing that. I also recognize that being on a board is critically important in terms of our civic responsibility. However, what I would say is that in any board that you're serving on, it should be a board either that you're passionate about, that plays to your strengths, or gives you exposure. So when you're like evaluating, whether or not you should be on the opera board, maybe that's going to give you exposure. So it's checking that box. But perhaps if someone asks you to be on the zoo board, and it's a local zoo, and it's going to take up 20 hours a week, and It's not playing to something. Now I will tell you, my first board was the Maryland Zoo. And the reason that I did that really was because of the blend. I was like, my son's 3 years old. He wants to go to the zoo. I can bring him to the zoo. I can have parties at the zoo. And there were a few potential clients on the zoo board, right? So if it can fit 2 of the 3 buckets, then that's even better, right? So think about those things and then look at something that where you get to play to your strengths. So if you're finance driven, serve on the audit committee. If you're a communications person, serve on the NomCom committee, something like that, where you get a chance to play to your strengths, because there are enough people out there telling you all day, every day, where you need to develop or get better or do this differently, right? So do something that's playing to those strengths, because that's going to make you feel successful and that you will actually get things accomplished. So I started out certainly more on the exposure side, because any board was going to give me exposure, right? But now I really do things that I have a passion for. And Born This Way Foundation is one of those in which I have a real passion for, where we are focused on mental health, right? COVID was not friendly to anyone, right? Gratefully, I was already on the board, but I could see the impact that it was having on mental health. And one of the things that we do every September is 21 days of kindness. And so I did this at Deloitte with Kathy. As she knows, we used to have a national calendar for 1 through 21 of the things we're going to do each day. I now do it at the MBPA. I have my own calendar that I follow every single day. We have one at the MBPA office that they follow every day, or whomever wants to follow it. Elementary school, middle school, high school, there's a calendar for all of them. And we'd come home and talk about, what'd you do to be kind today? It became this sort of ritual because there wasn't enough kindness. And in Washington, D.C., when I became the managing partner in 2017, it was polarizing. And we had to find a way to be kind to one another. So I didn't care what political party, what affiliation, what you were doing. We can be kind to one another. There's no one who's going to argue with you about being kind, right? People, although I will tell you, I found people that argued with me about it because they said, this Pollyanna crap you're doing is just, there's no room for that in the corporate world. And I thought, well, it doesn't mean that you don't terminate people if things aren't working out, because you have to do that in a way that leaves people with dignity and respect. And quite frankly, being kind sometimes is telling them this is not the right job for you, right? And so having to understand and make that distinction, I think, is critically important. But I think kindness is critically important. And I would encourage you all to please go out there and do this. May I take a privilege real quick to just tell you really quickly, because I want you to tell someone else this. When I actually was asked to serve on the board, I think I served on 10 boards at that time. So as managing partner, Kathy will tell you, we get like sort of 6, you're automatically on. And then I already had 4 for colleges, et cetera. And so my team said, do not sign up for another board. And I was on a panel with Cynthia Germanato, who's Lady Gaga's mother. And I was so obsessed with all this work that they were doing. And 6 months later, she calls me and she said, Tamika, we don't have any outsiders on our board, but we would love to have you as our first outsider to the board. And I said, yes. And I was like, God, I know they told me I'm not supposed to do this, but you're supposed to do all this due diligence, right? First. So how does it fit in these 3 buckets? So I back up and I said to them, well, what is it that you do? Where are you located? Deloitte, we're checking, what location, who you're affiliated with. And she told me that they're in San Francisco, and I asked them why. And they said, well, we want to be where things are happening. And so Maya, who was the executive director, said, we're in San Francisco because did you know that the most suicide attempts happen at the Golden Gate Bridge? And I did not know that. And she said, and I met this gentleman, his name was Kevin, and Kevin actually had to take 3 buses to get to the Golden Gate Bridge. And for people who have potentially attempted suicide, it's usually not the first time or the second time, it's like the 3rd or 4th time that they really go through with it. And so for Kevin on this one day, he said he got on the first bus and he said, if someone asks me how I'm doing, I'm going to turn around and go back. And no one did. And then he got on the second bus and he said,
we're just kind of inquiring.
If someone even smiles at me, I'm going to turn around and
Technically,
go back.
currently own a
And no
home.
one
It's
did.
only in my name currently.
When he
And
got
then
on the
we're
3rd
kind
bus,
of
he goes,
looking
you know what, I'm going to
to-
give up. But if they just,
I don't want
someone
to get
acknowledges
pre-qualified.
my
I don't think we're at that point yet.
presence, I'm going to
But,
turn around and go back. And no one did.
Just
So
we
he
had
walks to
talked
the top of
about-
the bridge and a
we
woman
had previously
standing
looked
next
into
to him
like
doesn't even pay
affordability and
attention
how
to him,
much we could
doesn't look
afford
him in the eyes.
jointly. And
Said, would you take a
prior
picture of me?
to I
And he
was only
does,
me.
and he jumps
And
from the bridge. True story.
With interest rates and everything right now, I just don't know where that's at.
And he tells the story because he said it is just basic human kindness, just acknowledging that someone else exists. We don't think about that, but even the person on the street, they just want you to make eye contact with them. Yeah. They just want you to acknowledge them. At Deloitte, one of our offices in Washington, we had 5,000 people. And the moment people got on the elevator, they went right to their phone. Because if they don't make eye contact with people, I don't speak to anybody, I don't have to say anything, all of this. I thought, we have got to change that. So I started being really loud on the elevator. I'd get on it, good morning, everybody. And people were like startled. Like, I'm like, this is our building. Like, I can say hello, but somebody needed that. Somebody needed to know it was a good morning, right? And so we have to think about the impact that we have on people, even as simple as acknowledging their presence. So sorry, I went over because I messed up your question time, but I wanted to make sure that you all knew that.
Maria, I promise. So can I just take one audience question since I promised?
Yes, but I do want to just say, I think, you know, that when we talk about great leaders, compassion is one of the empathy and compassion are two of the strongest things. So I am just thrilled that you said that, Tamika, because that is such an important thing as leaders and future leaders, senior executive leaders, to be compassionate and to be empathy and to have acts of kindness is critical to, you know, success.
Thank
Amen. You. Okay, so we're going to do one audience question. Please stand up. Tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Amanda Paris.
Hi, Amanda. Yes.
I love your outfit.
Thank you.
love. My question for you is, with how important personal brand is, I'm curious to know, what is the part of your personal brand that you are the most proud of?
So I think it's probably kindness. Thank you, Amanda. That was a softball too. I love it. Thank you. It is really kindness, because I do think through all of the things that happens, people will likely say that I was kind, right? And to me, that is absolutely critically important, because there are some things that we have to do that are really tough, right? But being kind to one another is absolutely critical. So Adam Silver and I are talking right now about a civility statement that we will issue among the players and the PA and the NBA, because we think that we can lead by example. Yeah, we've got some tough negotiating to do over the next several months, but we can do it in a way that's civilized and kind. And at the end of it, no one's going to walk out of there and say, Tamika was not kind. They may say she was a little difficult, she wasn't agreeing, she didn't listen, you know, whatever they want to say, but I don't think they will ever say I was not kind.
Awesome. Tamika, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Ladies, please join me in thanking Tamika for talking to us.
Thank you.
Thanks. We're coming at the tail end of a fantastic morning. So all I can say is, wow, what a great lineup of presenters we've had today. And so I'm just so excited that we can all gather here together. And, you know, I think no matter where we are in all of our careers, you can't argue that you're always learning. So I continue to take so many nuggets away from today. My name is Yanni Choi Gordon. I am the Chief Operating and Chief Marketing Officer at JMG Financial Group, where our headquarters is in Downers Grove. And I'm so excited to have a number of colleagues and rising stars from our firm here today, and also on Zoom. Hi, you guys. So happy to, I'm really looking forward to hearing all of their feedback as well. And I have a feeling that we're gonna probably have to invest in some bumper stickers with some of our new mottos that we're coming up with today. But let me also encourage you to continue the networking aspect of this. This goes beyond this group. So we've heard a lot of good suggestions, and I'm sure you've met a lot of new people in different industries. And so please take advantage of that as you get back to work. So I am so excited to introduce our next two presenters, and they're kind of the same person, actually, as I've gotten to know them, because a lot of parallel things in their lives. Katie Doyle, who prior to her current work on a number of private and public company boards, served as CEO at Swanson Health, which is a private equity-backed e-commerce health and wellness brand, where she remains an advisor and an investor.
and Kathy Kenworthy, who currently serves as the president of Conceivabilities and founder and president of Health Hippo, a subscription-based website that enables consumers to participate in their own healthcare decisions. And I checked it out. It's quite impressive and very informative. Both have led some very large organizations through tremendous growth, and I'm so excited for them to share some of that knowledge with us today. And so coincidentally, both completed their undergraduate work at Georgetown University, and both were at McKinsey early on in their careers. Both have 3 children. Both were given names Catherine. One just goes by C and one goes by K. Yeah. And some fun facts I'd like to share too. So about Katie, I found out she was a White House intern before it was a scandalous position. She has met 3 presidents, and she also lived in South Africa and speaks both Italian and French. And about Kathy, she still likes to do her daily New York Times crossword puzzle. She admitted that to me. And after her youngest went off to school, she did a walkabout in Latin America by herself for 6 weeks. So that sounds amazing, and I look forward to hearing about that. And she has a obsession with tennis. So, and I, as a fellow tennis player, that's exciting to hear as well. So we are thrilled to have them give us a talk today on Straight Talk About Money. And please welcome my fellow Chicago Network members, Kathy Kenworthy and Katie Doyle.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, all. We're the final session between you and lunch, but money's an important topic. Perhaps we have your attention now. So I'm going to speak a little bit about, let's say, the professional side of money in terms of owning a P&L. And Katie, I'm going to talk about building and managing wealth. So our objective today is hopefully to motivate you to take action on these topics, to engage with you in a conversation. Is everyone ready to participate with us? Yes, that's good to hear because our presentation completely depends on that. So I'm going to, and I think we're completely intimidated by following Suzette and Tamika. Was that not amazing? So very humble. We'll see if we can add to the dialogue. So I want to share a quick anecdote about tennis. Any tennis players in the room? Couple. Okay, the rest of you play along. It'll be fine. And I had the opportunity a week and a half ago to go to the US Open. I'd never been to a professional tennis tournament before. Live stream, completely obsessed. This is where I'm at. And I'm watching these tennis matches. And I'm, of course, knowing of this presentation, I'm thinking a little bit about men and women and how we all show up. And I didn't have the framework of PEI, but this is all I and E. And, I watch, they have pairs of men playing, they have pairs of women playing, pairs of men, pairs of women. And the men consistently did 3 things that were very different than the women. And I don't declare that one or the other is right, but I thought it was an interesting reflection. So the men would stand there at the baseline and they would just keep bouncing the ball until the chair umpire would admonish the audience and say, can you please take your seats? The men are waiting for you. The women would walk out on the tennis court, off they'd go. People are standing up, whatever, they would just play on. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Yeah, no one's surprised about that in here. 2, there's always this little negotiation that goes on between the player that has the, is the server, is kind of fed the tennis balls from the ball boy, ball girl, and the men consistently, look at the balls, toss them back, ask for other balls, right? Anyone want to guess what the women generally do? They take the balls and serve. Okay, so interesting. And then 3rd, and this was a little bit new this year at the US Open, there's long been a prohibition on players interacting with their box. Okay, so there's the coach, and right. This year that was different and they were allowed to receive a little bit of coaching from the box. So guess what the men did?
I mean, they wouldn't make a move without standing there looking at their box, wondering what the box thought they should do. What did the women do? Never even looked at the box, by and large. Generally, they would just, right? So it just occurred to me as I was watching this, it just was an interesting reflection. Here are elite athletes at the top of their game, great levels of confidence, and they are showing up in a little bit of a different way. So something to reflect on. Okay, so as we dive into this topic of money, we're going to start right away with a question. If you're following online, you'll be able to vote, and we'll have some of those results at the end of all this. But here we're going to look just for a show of hands. So is experience managing a profit and loss statement, P&L, revenue, expenses, a standard and essential criterion for C-level roles? And the answer really we're looking for is one. The answer is yes, it depends, or no. What do you think? What's your opinion? Can I see a show of hands for yes? Can I see a show of hands for it depends? Can I see, is anybody going to vote for no? Okay, we've got some no. Excellent. Okay, so I'd say we have 2/3 say yes. I don't have the math. 25% are saying it depends, and a few people are saying no. Does that sound right?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll be your math.
Excellent. So I'm going to argue that the answer is specifically and only yes. C-level leaders are always responsible. There's a lot of words here, so bear with me. Responsible for allocating resources across their operation or function. They're held accountable for certain kinds of financial measures, not always revenue. And that always requires the ability to manage a P&L, i.e. the revenue and expenses of a business area. I would argue this applies to profit, nonprofit organizations, that comfort, that familiarity, any kind of role. I'm going to argue yes. Anybody want to push on that who said no or it depends here in the room? Please.
I think there are many leaders, I think that should be required, but I think there are many people in leadership positions who do not have that experience or even desire to manage that part of the business.
Great point. So for folks who are participating remotely, I think the perspective is it should be required, but the evidence says there's plenty of people in those roles who don't and may not even want that kind of experience. So great point.
I would say I think experience maybe could be required, but I don't think it needs to be. I think that is something you can learn how to do, or sorry, no problem. I think
You're good.
I think you can leverage other skill sets, and there are other transferable skills that may help you allocate resources. You don't necessarily have to have the experience of managing a P&L specifically. You can learn that skill while you're coming into that role.
Okay, great. So the perspective here is maybe you can learn it, leverage other skills. I'm going to see if I can enlarge your thoughts on that point as we go forward. Okay, one more comment. Anybody on this side of the room want to offer? No one, no one. Okay, hold those thoughts and let's explore those as we keep going. So in what functional role is a leader most likely to gain this experience? Most likely. So pick one. Options are marketing, finance, human resources, legal, operations. So show of hands, marketing, most likely. Anyone spending big marketing budgets? Anyone? Finance? Most, 2/3, 3/4 voting. Human resources, it's the perfect way to get P&L responsibility. Legal, anybody legal? Those big payouts, settlements, anyone? Operations. Ooh, okay, we've got a lot of votes for operations. I think we're adding to more than 100% on this one. I think we had more votes.
Probably that was
100.
60% operations, 35% finance.
Okay. Anybody who did not vote for finance that wants to offer a view on why you picked, I guess, operations? This side of the room. Here we go in the back.
Operations, right? It gave me some visibility into the actual ins and outs of the business more so than just numbers.
Yeah.
So it actually helped me understand what is behind the numbers P&L that I was seeing before in the seat of finance. So I will say operations perhaps is the functional role that will help leaders gain that P&L experience.
Great. So operations, kind of the real world experience behind the math. And that's the perspective here. Great point. Other perspectives on operations or other roles? Okay. What does that say? I have terrible eyesight.
Just a
virtual question.
A comment from a participant on Zoom. Department heads are responsible for their own P&L. We work with finance.
So the department heads are responsible for the P&L. They work with finance. Great comment. Hold that thought. We're going to come back to that. So on this one, I'm going to argue, and again, I'm going to put perspectives out here that you guys can beat up. We just really wanted to see if you're paying attention. Yes, it's finance is a very good way to learn the numbers, although I think your point's very well taken about all of these other functions are in fact the real world of where these things happen. Okay, so do women, there's only a couple more, bear with me. Do women on average receive the same information as men about the necessity of P&L responsibility for C-level roles? And in this case, I'd like you to select one answer, yes, to a degree, or no. This presumes you agree with me that it is an essential criteria for C-level roles. So let's take that leap of faith and say, do women on average, not any individual, but do women on average get the same degree of information about how critical that is? Raise your hand for yes. Women get just the same information. I've got a couple. To a degree. I've got a few more. I'm going to bet I know where the majority of you are. No. All right, I think we've got 85% on that. And the answer is simply no. Lots of words on this page. According to many studies, and I have one specific study cited, women rarely receive information leading them to roles with P&L responsibilities. Unfortunately, promising female talent may not have coaches, leaders, mentors, or sponsors that directly state the importance of a career trajectory focused on financial responsibility. In this particular study, women had a role with P&L experience. 42% of women had a role with P&L experience, which was 90% lower than men. And in fact, it happens early. 81% of the male executives that were part of the survey received P&L experience very early in their career as compared to 63%. So there really is a meaningful gap on this particular point. So
Kathy, can I add?
Please.
Even more so when you talk about CEOs, right? So kind of 85% of CEOs have had P&L experience, and not as many functional leaders like CHROs or CFO, but the very best of the functional leaders that are in the C-suite really understand the P&L, right? So I think that was your point. You might not have had, but so much so that they understand, they're counselors to the CEO about how to drive the productivity of this business and how to grow revenue and how to manage costs and how to increase profitability, profit or nonprofit. But so I think the path to CEO is through the P&L, right? But the path to the C-suite, if you're going to be, staying power or get there faster, has to be that you understand the guts of the business. You understand how the P&L works, and you understand how your function contributes to the growth of the business.
And so I think great points. And since Katie and I are the same person, we basically have the same perspective on this.
I stole what she was going to say. Probably.
No, not at all. Can we all think of anecdotes where that's not true? Of course we can, right? But this is about how do we play the odds? How do we put ourselves in the best position and fully agree with all of that? So concrete actions that leaders who are aiming for C-suite roles and potentially even CEO roles, whether it's for ourselves, other high potential women that we're mentoring, what can we do to gain that P&L experience? And I'd like to see, again, show of hands for all of these things that you think could play a role. So just advance thinking through, get a job with P&L responsibility, write a business plan, ask a finance leader to mentor you, build your own investment portfolio, listen to a public company earnings call, write a public company earnings call, open your own P&L and analyze it, right? Okay, so get a job with P&L responsibility? Who thinks that's an important action? Okay, I'd like to see every hand in the air for that. It probably is the best way to actually get P&L responsibility. Okay, write a business plan. Who thinks that's a nice, juicy, concrete action? I see 30% of hands raised. Ask a finance leader to mentor you. We had the woman who had the, tell me your name in the back here. You, yeah. Katie. So Katie said, operations and finance working together, right? So that was your answer. So ask a finance leader to mentor you. We had how many hands in the air? Similar. Build your own investment portfolio. Few less hands, stay tuned. Katie's going to make more of an argument there. Listen to a public company earnings call. I'd like to see every hand raised for that one. But, you know, I think obviously the point we're trying to make here is the answer is there's not one right answer. There are lots of concrete things. Maybe one of the things we do is take a job with revenue and earnings accountabilities, but all of these can play a role. Okay, last one. What do these terms mean? Deferred revenue, PE ratio, free cash flow, left side of the balance sheet, earnings adjustment, negative debt covenants, working capital. What we're going to do in painstaking detail is define each one of these right now. Just kidding. Okay, so there's 7 of them. Do you know what one of these terms mean? If I called on you, you'd feel perfectly happy defining it for everybody else in the room. Even one of these terms. Okay, I think we have 30 hands in the air, maybe. Keep them high, keep them high, keep them up on this one. Okay, 2 of these terms, no problem. 2 of these terms, you've got it. I could call on you this minute and you'd be happy to define it. Okay, 3 of these terms. I think we have 10 people left. Okay, 4 of these terms. You know where we're going. Okay, leave it up like 7 out of 7, no problem. At the break, please go find the women with their hands that are raised and ask them to define these things to you. These should be, when we talk about the language of money, the confidence, that firm handshake that we talked about in the prior segment. These need not to be opaque terms. These need not to be off-putting terms. These are all, we can put another 25 terms up here, right? This is the language of money. These are the terms that we need to make sure we're happy and familiar with. Okay. So here are a couple of lessons learned from me, and I'm going to hand off to Katie here. I'm here to argue in all of the different experiences I've had. Actually, my first job out of college was in investment banking. So I built spreadsheets with all these terms. I just learned from the beginning, this was kind of my early blueprint experience, was ripping apart a company's financials, putting them back together and doing it 200 hours a week. There's not 200 hours a week, but you understand what I'm saying there. So every job I had since then, that gave me a lens through which I interpreted everything that's going on. So it became completely instinctive over the decades of work experience that I've got. Is revenue growing faster than earnings? What is our gross profit margin? Does it give us enough room to fund the kind of operating expenses? Knowing those ratios, knowing what they look like, rattling them off. If I don't know those things when I'm in a situation, I'm deeply uncomfortable. I don't even know what we're solving for. This is the scorekeeping, and it is our opportunity to bring an attitude of confidence and certainty when we look at that. So that can be true. And I think it can, coming back to the point that was made over here, whether you're the recruitee or the recruiter, hopefully some of us in this room are already recruiting others for these C-level roles. If I was to time travel and do it over again, there are many times I told myself, well, this person's great and they can learn these other things along the way. That was almost always a poor decision on my part. Bringing people into these roles who have the command, who have the confidence, who can sit and, as Katie talked about, have the conversation with the CEO, super important. Ensure role clarity between leaders and non-finance and finance roles. So the operations point that was made here, the comment that came in on the phone about department leaders working with finance. Occasionally, very frequently, it can be the case that if the leader is not really confident about these topics, they can use the finance leader as a little bit of a crutch. Tell me what I need to know. Give me the bottom line. Just tell me the assumption I need to tell you, you go crank the numbers over there. Would we be willing to do this with anything else in our job responsibility? Somebody else write the communications plan. I'm head of communications. You just tell me what we, right? We wouldn't be willing to do this. So I would argue that level of confidence and having clarity. The finance team plays a very important role. But again, Kate, why I keep coming back to you, I think it's a super important point that the finance team isn't actually making these numbers happen. That's what's happening elsewhere in the business. Over communicate the expectation of gaining the P&L experience to the high potential women we in this room work with. I don't think I'm lacking any subtlety in the point I'm making, and I hope you will bring that forth as well in your conversations with the high potential women that you work with. Even some of these statistics were a little eye-opening for me in terms of, yeah, I'd hear anecdotes that maybe women didn't think they got that feedback. And the truth is, the survey data, I think, is very telling. There are scores of women who don't get that kind of simple and clear perspective. Make specific assignments to those interested in a C-suite role. How many of you have ever met with a mentee who said, I want to be a P&L leader. I want to be a CEO. Has that ever happened? Male, female, anybody here ever met with anyone who said that? Couple of hands. Hopefully we've all, maybe we ourselves have that ambition as well. And I certainly, my lesson learned is I'd like to be able to turn to that person and say, let's talk about a real set of actions that you can take. Go over the weekend, figure out what these 7 terms mean, and come explain them to me on Monday. That's a tangible action people can take to not kind of just admire the topic, but get more tangible. And then finally, as I'm leading to, know the words, use the lingo, calculate the numbers. What is the PE ratio for this company? What is the gross margin percentage for our company? Why did gross margin go up by 3 points this quarter over last quarter? Use the language and get comfortable with it. It's something we can all do, and there's lots of ways we can do it. Okay, over to Katie.
Questions at the end.
You can do questions at the end.
Yeah. Okay, my goal in the next 15 minutes is to really, as Kathy alluded to, motivate you to take some actions to take care of yourself, right? And it's a personal conversation. Some of the earlier sessions were personal, but so I'm going to share some things about myself. I hope they're not off-putting, but I hope it encourages you to be vulnerable and honest with yourself. But I feel very strongly about female empowerment through financial planning. And as I must say, there's a bunch of financial planners in the room who are qualified to do this. I am not. And I hope that makes it more credible to you that, anyone can do it. So here's some personal, when I left college, I was debt-free. So I had a very big advantage provided to me, but I had exactly $6 in my bank account. My parents gave me no money. And 2 years later, I paid my way through my graduate school program. 5 years after that, I had my first child. I went 8 years working part-time. I took 2 one-year sabbaticals. I put all 3 of my kids through private schools and college, and I have not a financial worry in the world. So this is what I hope for you, right? And the way I did it was some of these things. I apologize to the financial planners in the room because there's a little bit of basics here, but I really want to share some of these stories with you guys because it's super important. And way too often women have, think of money as a dirty topic or scary or overwhelming, or it's something I'd rather have my husband do or somebody, or just not do. It's too time consuming, but I want to spend a lot of time on other things. And I really want to encourage you to seek out one of these financial advisors or YouTube or whatever, and start to have a plan and work your plan. You're welcome, all the financial advisors. So raise your hand as soon as one of these things starts to appeal to you. I want to know if anyone has a long-term dream where they would like to buy a home or buy a second home in a warm place. Raise your hand if this applies to you. And if I say something else that applies to you, start adding the numbers up. Okay, so this is one thing that applies to you. And add another finger if you want to start a family or you already have a family and you'd like to put them through college. Add another if you'd like to retire before you're 60. Add another finger if you, not hand, because there's only so many, if you'd love to just be able to travel extensively your whole life. Add another hand if you'd love to give back to organization that you believe in and make a substantial contribution at some point in your life. Add another hand if you'd like at some point to take some time off or work part-time or, you know, have a break in your career. Add another one if you want to make sure that everyone in your family, including your parents, is taken care of from a healthcare perspective for the length of their life. So we've got a lot of people with their hands up and some, you know, some with none, but these are long-term goals and they all are expensive, right? And they all require starting to plan for it now. So this is where you've got to kind of be vulnerable, be a little bit honest with the next question. Please show me a raise of hands if you feel like you're 100% on track to fulfill whatever number of goals you had. Okay, we know where the financial planners are. So there's, you know, 4 or 5 of us in the room, but we're very successful women, right? And most of us are not 100% prepared. You're not alone. The statistics are overwhelming. 75% of Americans are not on track to their long-term goals. 69% of women are not on track to retire by 60. You know, 40% of women feel confident that if they had a disruption in their career, they'd be okay. What? That's super vulnerable. So, you know, raise your hand if they're partially funded, but I'm focused on near-term expenses right now. Right? I don't know how. I don't know how to start planning for these kinds of things. Nobody? You all know how to do this? I'll speed up. I don't know, and I'm not really the one responsible for doing the investing in my family. Okay, I hope that's true. But in the like the Bank of America survey, 9% of women are in charge of their investments, right? And the husbands are in charge. Right? Fidelity did a 30-year survey of 5 million account holders, and the women outperform the men on account holdings because they bet on individual stocks and we do it methodologically, right? For them, it's sports gambling. For us, it's building for the future. And I'm making a healthy salary, and I just believe these long-term things will take care of themselves, right? I'm so happy that you guys are way better than all the other women in the United States, but it could be that we don't want to admit it, right? And I'm going to offer some tips, but maybe based on the activity level of you guys already have, they might be redundant. I hope they are. To raise your hand if you would say, I feel confident about managing my wealth, building wealth, different than paying my bills every month. Right, but building real wealth for myself and managing it on an annual basis. We have confident, a couple people. I feel smart. I feel empowered. I'm worried. I'm frustrated. I'm uninformed, and I'm overwhelmed. So in a typical room, which I think, thank you for everyone for your honesties, women are twice as heavy on the bottom half of those negative associations than they are on the top half. And that's what I want to encourage you to get your arms around and get over that, right? It's not hard. Sorry, financial planners. It's not hard. You just have to do it, right? You have to get engaged and build wealth or have a plan and make a plan. And I'll talk about, like, it's scary right now in the stock market, and I can talk about perspectives on that without giving advice. What would you say is your biggest barrier to building real wealth, financial wealth? No, I'm focused on paying off debts. I don't have enough savings. My cost of living is very high, right? And getting higher by the minute. Today's CPI came out another 8% inflation. I don't have enough confidence to really know what I should be doing. I don't have enough time, right? And I'm not the primary long-term financial decision maker in my household. Obviously, I'm going to say all of these are bad excuses, right? Except, I'll put some into my working tips on how I would prioritize those, but you've got to make time for this. The only reason I ended up where I am is I started working at 21 years old and set up an automatic thing from my bank account into my investment account. And every month, every year, financial crash, dot-com crash, 2008 crisis, I kept going, right? And I never stopped, even now. So which of these statements would you agree with? Number one, it's safer. I just feel like it's safer to keep my money in a savings account rather than putting it to work in investments. Okay, that's very good because the average savings account yield is 2%. Over the last 30 years, bonds are 5%, stocks are 11%, and private equity funds are 20%, right? So if you keep money in a savings account, which none of you do more than you need to, and average, say if you put $15,000 in a savings account, 40 years, and you put 15,000 in an investment account, 40 years down the road, the savings account is worth $900,000. Great. That's really great. The invested account is worth $3.5 million, right? So put it to work. Don't keep it on, but you have to have a rainy day fund. But you can't just kind of say the safer thing is to keep it. You have to be investing in order to get to a safe spot. There are conflicts between my short-term goals and my long-term goals. So that's very realistic, and that's going to get to one of my tips. But this is a place where, when someone was using the analogy, put your own oxygen mask on first. You've got to put this as a priority. Even your kids' college can be fun. You can take out a loan for that. You can't take out a loan for your retirement. You can't get out a loan for an urgent healthcare need. You've got to have investments. Investing's too complicated or time consuming or too expensive. Right? Yeah. But it used to be like in the old days when we were investing, it was like, $50 for a trade and stuff. They're now essentially free. There's lots of ETFs. Anna was here. She'll tell you. These are like portfolio asset allocation funds that can say how much risk you want to take, or you can set a target date. I want to retire by 2040, and then it just automatically corrects itself, and that's all you have to do. So it can be really simple. You just have to understand the vehicles. Who feels now is not the right time in the market to be investing or to be investing for long-term goals? That I empathize with. It's a tough time right now. It's a scary stock market, but you never will get the timing right. And it's the discipline of always putting money aside, right? There's a statistic, if you were invested every day for the last 40 years, but missed 5 of the top performing days, your net worth is 40% lower. So who knew what those days were? Nobody, right? The point is, have a plan with a risk tolerance that you're willing to keep and stick with it, even during these kinds of times. And who just feels, I prefer not to spend my time on it. Frankly, I wish Katie was done. Right. You've got to spend time on it. You got to spend time on it. This is not something you can delegate to someone else, specifically also a husband. There's too many stories I know of, unfortunately, of people whose husbands died suddenly and they had no idea where the investments were, how they were invested, or they were suddenly divorced and the money was gone and they had never seen an asset allocation. This is true. Other friends who, were very much on top of it and ended up with disproportionate. People that have healthcare, if you delegate, you can't have an equal marriage if you don't have equal responsibility for how you're investing your net worth, right? You need to be in on that conversation. Abuse shelters are filled with women that the only reason they didn't leave is because they didn't think they could live on their own without their husband's money, right? Wealthy women too. I don't want to leave. He's got all the money, right? Don't let that happen to you, right? So here's my Monday morning actions for you guys. 5 things. You might always already be doing these things, but if you're not, or you might want to revisit them, I just wanted to make it actionable. Here are 5 things I really recommend for you to do. Have a budget. So know this is how much I make, this is how much I spend, and spend after, my second lesson is after I've already maxed out my contributions to my employer's retirement funds. This is how much I have left over. And then this is how much I have to put into savings to either pay off a high credit loan, a credit card, or a student loan or something. What is your plan? And a lot of people, it is, unfortunately, sometimes you have to spend a little less, particularly in inflation, right? The goal is you've got to spend less than you earn so you have savings so you can invest. I know that's basic, but all of us love a lot of pretty things. And my daughter just graduated from college and she was like, how do I choose between SoulCycle and Starbucks? I'm like, this is going to be great. You're going to have to, because guess what? You can't go home. But I had a more serious conversation. Max out all your benefits that your company offers you. So again, even if you feel like my cost of living is too high, I can't really do that. That's crazy talk. A 401k, if they offer it to you and they match it, it's the best investment you'll ever make in your life. So say you put 5,000 in, your company matches it 5,000. What other investment are you ever going to find that doubles? Guaranteed. It's not like maybe it will, or there's time or overtime or risk. It's doubled. So put 100% of what you can against that right away, and then live off the rest, right? And if they have HSAs like health savings accounts, then everything you're spending, sunscreen, anything, is 30 to 40 to 50% less than you would have to pay for it otherwise. So maximize the benefits that your companies offer you. Definitely get rid of high interest debt. That's horrible burden, and it's a huge percentage of Americans have that. I mean, the average credit card interest rate is 20%. So every month you're holding $100. It's costing you $20, right? That's the worst place to have your money. Do everything you can, tighten your belt as much as possible to get those things off of you, because that's a real burden and it really keeps you up at night. Make sure you have an emergency fund. As you know, we saw in COVID and rockier times ahead with recessions, you don't know when companies are going to lay off people. You don't know when, you're going to have a health crisis. You don't know when your spouse is going to lose their job. And it's a great feeling to be like, and we'll be fine. And we'll be just fine because we've got 3 to 6 months of cushions sitting in the bank. That's just a really nice feeling. And then this is, I guess, where maybe all of us more likely are, and it sounds like, we have we have a lot of financial advisors in the room, but do educate yourself on this. It is really important for you to understand you can do some very simple portfolios and allocations and ETF funds, but then get involved and stay involved, right? Stay involved. There's just, a lot of benefits from it, which comes to my number one lesson learned. Building wealth and ultimately having wealth is a central component to your overall well-being. And what I mean by that is, like, if you guys have all heard about the book, What Would You Do If You Had No Fear? Mine is like, what would you do if you had no financial fear, right? You could walk away from a toxic job. You could start a new business. You could, get fired, not worry. You could, leave a toxic relationship. You could, go to Europe for 6 months. You could, that kind of freedom and knowing that you're on a path that says, I'm going to be totally financially independent and I can give back to the charities I care about and I can take care of my parents who think they have to go and own it. That is like the ultimate. Nobody can touch you. You can be like, oh, I'm worried I'm going to get fired, or I'm worried I won't get promoted. Be like, I don't care. I'm fine. I'm completely fine. And everyone I love is fine. Right. So I think I really encourage you as soon as you can, as young as you can, and it sounds like you're all on the path, but this is really important, and make room for it. So have a plan, work the plan, and it gives you so much freedom because you're like, I'm going to leave this job because I don't like it, and I'm going to go to the next one, and I'm going to be fine, right? Or I'm going to make a legacy donation to a company, organization I care about. Building wealth and managing wealth is all about investing. So I was always in the early days. I spent 20 years at McKinsey. It was 100% cash compensation. And I was like, okay, the cash is what's really important. And my father kept pounding it in. He's like, it's what you clear and what you invest, right? You'll never be wealthy off of just your salary, right? You've got to clear it and invest it. And that's the way to protecting yourself and creating real wealth. That was counterintuitive because I was always like, when people are leaving, you're like, how much money do they make? How much money do they make? Oh, they're going to be really wealthy. It's like, no, it's the clear and reinvest. Start early, start now, start as soon as you can. Warren Buffett famously said, well, his 2 pieces of advice, which I'm kind of echoing. One is, one of the wealthiest men in the world. And he said his life is the result of compound interest. So, again, my daughter was born 2000, opened a 529 college savings plan, $100 a month, boom. College paid for when she was 12. It was like, you just needed to start right away and put it in there, or your retirement, and put it in there. And just do a little bit. It's a lot of discipline. Understanding finance, both from a wealth perspective, as well as Kathy was highlighting on the P&L, is very important to your credibility, right? But in work, understanding it, not wincing from it, like, I don't know, my husband does that, or, I'm scared of that, or I don't understand all that stuff, diminishes you, right? It's important to stay in that conversation, whether it's about work or the P&L at work or investments, really important. I sit on the finance committee for the Museum of Science and Industry, and it's the titans of Chicago, right? The chairman of Credit Suisse, chairman of BMO, of Bank of America, everyone, and the big PE firms. And we talk about how to invest the endowment of MSI all the time. And then I take that over to my financial advisor and I'm like, turns out we're underinvested in private equity, but it's very important to be credible. And I'm the only woman on that, but I learned from it, but you're participating in it. Get and leverage professional advice. Again, you're welcome, financial planners, but it is your responsibility, right? So this is like, you can have a nanny, but the kid's still yours. You can go to the doctor, but like you're still in charge of your healthcare. I would advise you to get professional advice. It can be very inexpensive. Sorry about this, financial advisors, but I don't know if you guys know Sally Krawcheck, but she has Elevest, and it's $1 a month for membership. And they will give you the tools online to say what your budget should be, what your retirement savings need to be, how many years you're gonna do that, right? The Skim has Skim U, and like next week they're having a session on managing money and how to build an investment portfolio for free, sponsored by Fidelity. I'm not a Fidelity employee, but there's a million ways to just get educated, many of which are free, and start getting involved and protecting yourself so that you can travel extensively, buy a second home, pay for everyone's healthcare, pay for education, and feel totally empowered and confident that anything that comes your way, you can handle because you've got a plan. So we still have 5 minutes left for questions. Anyone? You'll stand with me.
Great job. Okay, we have a question here in the back. I have 2 questions actually. Wait.
When you say you need to spend time on this, which we all know we do, I
can't hear you.
When you say we need to spend time on this, how much time weekly would you say to have a strong grasp?
Okay, well, me right now,
yes,
I spend a lot of time on this. But I've gotten to a point where I have a trickier portfolio because now a lot of what I do is private equity. So I've gone away from cash compensation. Like when I serve on the boards, I'm like, no, thank you on cash. I'll take it all in equity, right? And so because that has historically returned at a much greater rate and is taxed as a capital gain, so it has a lower tax rate. So it's a very complicated thing, and I don't have like someone managing my finances, so I spend a decent amount of time on that, and I have 3 kids in college, and it's tricky. But earlier it was much less, right? It was like, again, right now I think this is, you could argue whether this is the advice, but Warren Buffett's great advice is put it in an index fund and let it sit. And don't touch it. Don't look at it going up, and just look at it 10 years from now, and then just keep funneling it in there. And everyone, you can walk into the average Fidelity office, and that broker is going to help you build a plan. It's not the way it was when I was younger, but so I think it can be very low maintenance, and it's just and I would say have an annual review of where you're at and where your spending is at. But right now I spend a lot of time on it.
And then some of the resources you mentioned, you said Elevest?
Elevest, Ellevest. Okay. She's most powerful woman on Wall Street, and she left and started a firm of women for women.
Great questions.
There's a question over here, Laura.
What is your advice for strategies to pick a good financial advisor?
I don't, so I would on balance, so I would just go with the firms right? And people you trust. So I would look to the Chicago network, people that are inside of here, but the big, mine is Fidelity, but I know Northern Trust is here. I know, Invesco's here. Those big names you're going to be able to trust. And then there is a little bit of like personal fit with the person. Of all the financial advisors, there are like 25% that are female, so they're all in this room. So, but you do need to have some karma because you need to tell them stuff, right? Like, my sibling could have a problem. I might have to cover his kid to go to college or, whatever. You've got to be able to tell them stuff that you're planning for. But there's a lot of online tools. And then I think there is a build a relationship, and because a lot of things evolve over a 30, 40-year career, that relationship is important. And now like my kids will have that relationship with that person.
Hi, I have a question about diversifying. So I have a few accounts like Charles Schwab, Fidelity. I kind of want to bring them into one, but is that a good idea? Any thoughts about that?
Yeah. And then I see Kathy's looking for a question over there. Okay, so personal, again, you guys, I am not a CPA or like a financial planner. I have no degree in this. This is my personal advice. I like having it in one place because it's easier for me to get online and see everything and what. So I have like half of our net worth is at Fidelity and half is with McKinsey, who have an investment office. And I can see where everything is at once. That's not real diversification that you have some at Schwab and some at Fidelity. It's what you're invested in. So, how much in stocks, how much in bonds, how much in short-term, investments, how much are you keeping liquid? That creates your diversity. It doesn't matter. I think it's easier and you can build a more ongoing relationship and it's easier to see with them all in one place. That's my 2 cents. It's not a professional opinion.
So my question is for Kathy, and I think, Kathy, there are more women that are getting opportunities to run P&Ls in corporate America today, but I still see a lot of women that I think are just being pushed into the pool almost. And I have the suspicion, I don't know where it happens, but a lot of the men are getting a lot more training behind the scenes before they actually get into that role. So knowing that, what advice do you have in terms of tools, books, reaching out to mentors to really, I remember the first time I had to run a P&L and I really didn't know what I was doing and nobody really told me how to do it. It was just kind of like, here's your job. You should know how to do this job. And so, it was a lot of school of hard knocks learning and I'd like to have other people not have to go through that, I think.
Yeah. So, I think one connect point that Katie and I both feel very strongly about is for these investments, open up and read the P&L. And, that's a very good, relevant way to train yourself on what are the things that people talk about in these annual reports and why. We were also chatting about, does everyone feel really good about creating a spreadsheet? Everyone really, really good, right? Like YouTube, there's tons and tons of resources that are out there. This isn't, you have to go spend $15,000 at Northwestern or something, use the opportunities that are in your life, challenge yourself on an idea, a business idea that you think is compelling, write a business plan. I think it's fantastic if you wind up in a position that kind of forces the question and gets you sort of formally the resources. But on the off chance that's not your experience, I think we'd argue there's lots and lots of other ways to access resources. And as Katie has talked about emphatically, many of those resources are free. Many of those resources are far more available, low cost than has ever really been the case before.
Yeah, I would just add 2 things, Kathy. I think that if you're first time P&L and you're thrown into that role and you don't know what you're doing, embrace your finance chief, right? Be like, okay, what do you look for in the P&L? What worries you? What are the concerns? Like, how do I read this between us? And then find a great girlfriend that has P&L experience and say, like, I'll buy you brunch on Sunday, but like, what does this mean, right? Here's my P&L, just happened. I don't want to screw it up. What do you look for? What do I do? Find a great girlfriend, buy her brunch.
Yeah, and just, when I took this investment banking job out of college, I actually was a chemistry major. I had literally never done any, I hear a giggle. I was wondering what was the problem with the people who hired me because I obviously knew nothing. I was like, what's a client and what might we do for one? Anybody? And I am not kidding. The weekend before I started the job, I bought a book called something really like Accounting for Dummies and just read it. Who thinks of accounting as a scintillating topic? No financial planners. Okay, thank you. I actually have come to believe that accounting is like Shakespeare. It's where all the power dynamics get played out. It is the story of what is really going on and being really comfortable with those accounting terms. That book stayed by my side for a long, long time. So other questions? And Maria says, no more out of time. We are done. We were just going to tell you how to be not only a millionaire, a billionaire. Oh, sorry. No, we have to
next year. This is the millionaire plan, the billionaire one next year. No.
So thank you so much for your time, your interest.
Thank you.
I want to confess that I talked my friend Katie into doing this with me, maybe
Totally,
even
I was
before
like-
I told her about it. So
I was on the agenda and I look at her, I'm like, Katie, I don't know. I'm not a financial planner. I can't do that. And
Like,
she's
it's
like,
fine.
they want a relatable person. You know, I'm like, oh, okay, terrific.
Thank you all. I appreciate the opportunity. Here's to you guys.
Well, hello, good afternoon. I'm Linda Imonti. I'm the office managing partner here for KPMG, and I'm also the chair of the board for TCN. How many people had a great day? Can I hear some noise, not just hands? I mean, really, it's a room full of women. This is a room full of the best shoes in Chicago right now. Seriously. I want to make sure we thank our sponsors. So our gold sponsors were Invesco and KPMG. And our copper sponsors were Halo Investing, Healthy Communities Foundation, S&C Electric Company, and St. Xavier University. So for any of you that are in the room, thank you. Today wouldn't be possible without the sponsors. I wanted to just take a few minutes and reflect. Maria and I have been over there all day trying to capture really fun and important statements that were made. And there were way too many. But there were some really cool ones that came through. Some a little bit more fun than others, but I'm going to try and hit some of the ones that we picked up on. So Elizabeth, act inclusively, portray agility, and be the influencer. But one of the things I want to make sure we capture and think about as we think about her speaking today, she spoke over and over and over again with an underlying message of courage, which was incredible. Courage, fearlessness. You could hear that in so many of the things she said. But one of the final statements she left with you was kick butt, right? So I think that's important to remember as you walk out that door, because we do it, we have to do it, and we do it every day. So keep those statements running through. Tamika and Suzette, wow, incredible, right? Get out of your own way. We stand in our own way every day. Our brain gives us our own limits every day, right? Get out of your own way. We have a duty to support other women, right? Woman on women crime. I've never heard that, but it's a fabulous saying, and I'm keeping it with me. I'm keeping it. Are you going to be there, or are you going to be amazing? Okay. So there was some conversation today too about the way we think, right? The way we see the world, the way we think. When you get up every morning, ask yourself if you're going to be amazing that day. We all do it. It doesn't matter whether we're the ones up here giving suggestions to all of you, or whether you're the ones up here. We still do it. We wake up every morning and we still, I have tons of self-talk, but you get up every morning and you decide what your day looks like, and you decide if you're courageous, you decide if you're fearless, and you decide if you're amazing, right? So it's a good practice every single day to make sure you're talented. You'll need it. We all need it in our careers every day. We all need it in what we do. So give it to yourself, right? Really important messages. Our final with Kathy and Katie. The one thing I picked up from that, which I can't really say in the terminology I would really say up here on stage and on video, but one of the things they talked about is all of us need grown-ass women money, right? What that means is you can make your own choices. You're not stuck, right? You always have an escape because you can always take care of yourself. You don't stay anywhere where you're not happy. You don't stay anywhere that's not respecting you or you're not growing in, because you have an exit. It is so important. I have a 23-year-old daughter. I have tried to program this into her head, right? You need that grown-ass money sitting there so you can decide what is best for you at any moment in any time, and you're not stuck. So the other thing I wrote down about the money one is, you know, we all come to the table with what I call our superpowers, right? We all have our own unique superpower. Sometimes we think it's our greatest weakness, and actually it's our superpower. So you got to find out what your superpower is. But I will tell you, money is also one of your superpowers. right? And that freedom that delivers for you is one of your superpowers. So you must focus on it. You must, I think someone asked how much time in the back, I think it was at that table, whatever it takes to get it right, right? To always have your freedom to do what you need to do next. So just a couple notes before lunch. It is a networking lunch. So you've all gotten to know the people at your tables already today. Can you switch it up? Can you move around, right? Get to know some other people. Sit with people you don't already know. And just a reminder, if you don't wish to be included in the post-event contact sheet, you need to opt out. I don't know where they go to opt out, Maria, but they opt out. Front desk, opt out at the front. It's been amazing for me to be able to sit and experience and listen to some of the most incredible speakers in the world today. And it's my colleagues and my friends. It was amazing to hear all your stories and your input and your advice. We had great speakers today. We had great sponsors today that helped us put this together. I know Maria's goal is to make this a 500-person event in person next year, right? In a year. Okay, in a year. It's been great to meet those of you that I've been able to meet today. We're so glad that you joined us. Enjoy lunch and please network. Thank you.